Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's video where we will be ranking all 20 MCU Marvel Cinematic Universe films. So I'm joined here by special guests, and I'll explain how this is going to work once we get, I want to introduce our guests. First of all, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while. It's so great to have you on again. Josh, thank you so much for coming and doing this, talking about Marvel movies.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Josh. I'm from Geeksiders. For anybody who doesn't know, you should check out our channel because we're really great.
Cool. And also joining us is Don Willi. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you again for having me, Mark. I'm here to keep this thing perfectly balanced.
And also joining us once again, Darrin from D's Reviews. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mark. We're always excited to chat with you guys and deep dive into some wonderful films, and especially today because Marvel is awesome and I love all of these films. So ranking them was a bit of a challenge for me. So hopefully we'll match with some, or at least surprise a few others.
Now, first of all, I have to apologize because I'm just getting over a cold, so I might cough a bit or sniffle, so I'll try to mute on that and keep that to a minimum. But here, so what we're going to do, or what happened, is that each of us has ranked the 20 MCU films from their least favorite to favorites and submitted their list to me, and I have averaged out all of the scores, so combined all of our scores to come up with a collective list of what our final results are averaged out. So I know the results. These guys don't know the results yet. So we're going to go one by one, starting with number 20 and going all the way to number 1 to reveal what the final result of this list is. And I have to say, for me personally, I like the Marvel movies, the MCU, but I'm not I wouldn't say I'm like a huge fan of it. And so I would say I had a clear top 5 and a clear bottom 5, but everything in between could have been like a 10-way tie. So it was hard for me to sort them out. And also for me, those 10, most of the films I would give a 7 out of 10. So I wouldn't say they're amazing. It's only when we get to my top 2 or top 3 that I really enjoy it. So it's interesting because some of these films I might have higher than the others, but I might not like as much. So it's going to be interesting to see the results. And also I have to say, Darrin and Don, I would say for the most part, we're on the same page, but Josh's list is almost like an inverse of my list. So it's going to be really interesting getting into it. There are a few places where we agree, but yeah, it's going to be there's some films in here that we were all pretty much in agreement. And there are other films where there's going to be massive disagreement. So that's going to be interesting getting into. Anyway, any thoughts about the list before we get started?
No, I would just say that I'm kind of in much the same way. There's definitely some that I love all of these films. I mean, I've rewatched certainly all of them. I am a massive Marvel film fan. Definitely there are some that I think didn't work as well. That are certainly by the bottom. There are definitely the ones at the top are all great. But yeah, much of the middle stuff, especially when we get into some of the top 10 parts, are almost like what I felt like during the day, what I feel like today. Maybe tomorrow's going to be a little bit different. So there's certainly a little flexibility, I think, in my list. But I think overall we got a pretty good breakdown.
I'm just going to say.
Go ahead, Don.
I'm just going to say preemptively, damn it, Josh. Damn it. I knew it. I knew it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Damn it, Josh.
For my part, I'll just say I had a lot of fun doing this list. It was really hard because for the most part, I really love all of these films. There's a handful I actively dislike. So my top 12 are pretty much I mean, if I scored them, it would be like, 8.2, 8.4, 8.5. They're like that close. And then like the last, 7 or 8 are like way, way down the like 5, so it was getting my top 12 put together was really hard because I would score them so close.
Yeah, I think it's definitely difficult too. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with the bottom one. Let us reveal what our collective worst MCU movie is. Number 20, and that is Thor: Dark World. So Darrin had this at number 20. Don had this at Don and myself had this at number 19. Josh, you were the highest at number 17 with Thor: Dark World. So Josh, why do you love this film? No, I'm just kidding. But you go ahead first. Talk about Thor: Dark World.
Well, just like my top 12 is basically interchangeable, my bottom 5 is basically interchangeable. I actively dislike my entire bottom 5. The only reason Dark World is 17 on my list is because I dislike 2 of the Iron Man movies more. Dark World is a bad movie. It is objectively a bad film. The performances aren't especially good. I didn't think the special effects were especially good. And I thought the plot was pretty boring, as it doesn't have a whole lot of strong points in this film. It's just bad.
Cool. Yeah. And for myself,
Don's
like
breathing smoke, he's already mad.
For myself, though, I would say, like, I don't think this movie, I wouldn't call it actively bad. Like, it didn't anger me. It didn't like, oh, this is a waste of my time. But to me, it's like, it's generic. It's a comic book movie. It's just very generic, very forgettable. Like, I hardly remember this. I remember like Loki's in it. He's kind of cool, I guess. But the villain is so throwaway. The plot's so throwaway. I never want to watch this again, and I just don't remember much from it. But anyway, anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was at number 19 for a reason. I mean, obviously there was a movie that I liked a lot less. I mean, look, was it horrible? I don't think that there are any truly horrible Marvel films, not to the level of something like a Justice League. but yeah, I mean, from where Marvel started to where they have been able to progress, this is definitely one of the earlier attempts that didn't work as well. So that's why I love it.
I just got to point out real quick in the chat, Broke Black Man says, I would literally have an empty space for 20 to not put this movie on here. Wow. But anyway, Darrin, your thoughts.
Yeah, I have to kind of go ahead and agree somewhat with Don there. I like all of these movies. Certainly, I don't think that Dark World is one of the better ones at all. That's why I have it at 20. But it suffers from a lot of sequelitis, which affects a lot of, I think, of the phase 1 and phase 2 films a lot. It suffered a lot from really trying to set up the Infinity Stones, trying to get the ether in there and get that explained. We, of course, have our forgettable villain. We've got, Thor. They still haven't quite figured out what exactly to do with him. So they push all the comedy on the secondary characters, which we don't really need to see. And God, why did you do that to poor Skarsgård? I mean, the guy is amazing, and you have him running around with no pants on. So that was kind of sad. The one high point I think that did work interestingly in the film is the kind of big final fight with the moving through the different portals and changing directions, especially as Thor's trying to call Mjolnir to him, and it keeps moving to different directions because he's in different places. I thought that was inventive and interesting, but that was really kind of the only part in an otherwise, very cookie cutter, don't know what to do with this film.
Honestly, I disagree real fast about that final battle thing. To me, it looked like a Scooby-Doo chase where they're going through the doors and they're coming back and forth. I thought it was ridiculous.
Darrin, you pronounced the name of that hammer wrong. It's meow meow.
Sorry, meow meow. I will never say that. I will never say that again.
But they should have been playing the Benny Hill music over that sequence. Anyway, let's get down to our number 19, still continuing on films we did not think too highly of. Number 19 on our collective list is Iron Man 3. Both Josh and Don have this as their number 20, least favorite. I had it at my number 16, and Darrin, you were the highest. You have this at number 15. So you go start us off with Iron Man 3. Oh, you're on mute, Darrin.
Yeah, I like talking on mute. I sound so much better that way. Yeah, well, again, Iron Man 3, it had a lot of energy behind it coming right after Avengers. There was a lot of big, interesting stuff. And I think Shane Black, tried to have some fun with this, a sort of a different take. And I think they were really trying to wrap up a lot of Tony Stark's storyline with this, not knowing if they're going to have him really for much more of the films. But like many other films I had talked about before, it suffers a lot from sequel-itis. They're really trying to squeeze more stuff. I think the introduction of AIM was interesting. I was excited to see this, but really it was the switcheroo with the Mandarin that I think really affected fans. They're really hoping for a good, authentic Mandarin feel, and that whole change, I think, really affected a lot of the reception from it. Also, our female villain, who, the doctor, was supposed to be a more important character, and that got kind of sidelined to focus much more on Killian. And I think the film kind of suffered it. Again, it started to fall into this expected rote film storyline making, which sort of made it, a bit more forgettable. Yeah, we had some cool suits, and yeah, the interaction with the kid was kind of fun and interesting, but definitely deserves to be towards the bottom of our MCU ranking list.
I'm going to say something a bit controversial about this film, even though I didn't have it that high, but I didn't have it like at my absolute lowest, because I like the Mandarin reveal. That is the one thing I like about the film. I thought it really worked. I didn't know about this character before, so I didn't have any expectations. It's just some generic, terrorist villain, which I was so sick of seeing, especially for that time period. So I actually thought it was really brave to be like, nah, he's just a red herring. He's just an actor pretending. I love that. The rest of the film I didn't care for, but I love that reveal. So that's why it's not at the bottom for me. But anyway, Josh and Don, why do you hate this film so much?
I'll take this one. Look, you know what? I will say this is definitely my least favorite film, and as someone who grew up a comic book reader and knowing about the Mandarin, I wasn't shocked that the Mandarin. I wasn't shocked about the Mandarin reveal because I understand, the character from the books came from a much different place in a political landscape that wasn't gonna fly today, right? So I already know they, but I wish they would have had the actual 10 rings, and introduced that in. But problems I had with the movie, one, the characterization of Tony Stark. He's got crazy PTSD. He's not sure whether or not he wants to be Iron Man anymore. And, at the end, he blow up all the damn suits. I was kind of like, okay, he went frantic about making all these damn suits just at the end to blow them all up. I was like, that was kind of an asinine point for me. And one of the things that seems to be a new movie trope, and I guess it's supposed to be kind of the girl power thing to do. And look, I have no problem with, strong female characters as long as they are actually developed. But the end with Pepper Potts saving Tony from from Aldrich Killian was bullshit. Because we've never seen her do any kind of training. She's never been anything more than a damsel in distress, even in this movie. And then all of a sudden, because she has the extremist, serum, now all of a sudden she can kick ass and beat the main villain. I was like, the fuck is this? Again, if they would have set it up that, she's been training because maybe she's seen that Tony's been going through what he's going through, or maybe she's just like, hey, you know what, I would like to take a more active role in what you're doing, then it wouldn't have come off as just like, okay, well, we need something for Pepper to do, and so gotta have girl power in there, so let's just do that. And I'm just like, yeah, no. Okay, and I've noticed that with a few movies lately, but like, for example, Catwoman at the end of The Dark Knight Rises saved Batman, but you know what? Catwoman was kicking ass the entire film. She practically kicked Batman's ass. So when she came and blew Bane away, it wasn't the thing of like, how the hell did this happen? But in this movie, it was just like, really? So now she's doing all kinds of flying kicks and all this other shit that, just a half an hour ago she wasn't able to do. But we're just fine with that. But yeah, no, you know what? Yeah, this is the one movie that I would say I actively dislike, that, like, because it doesn't feel, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling, it doesn't feel like an Iron Man movie to me. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie to me. This is the one kind of eyesore to me on the Marvel franchise. It just feels wholly out of place with everything else.
And that's where I'm at too, Don, is in the context of the other two Iron Man films, and in the context of the rest of the Avengers films, Tony Stark didn't feel like Tony Stark in this movie. And that's my chief complaint about it. I'm like, I don't buy this story. You didn't build up to him having this extreme PTSD at all. He just has it. And I'm like, no, man, build that up. And the same thing, but with while I didn't hate the end with Pepper, I'm like, Pepper Potts has been basically absent from most of the Marvel movies, whereas Tony Stark has been a very present figure. I feel like if you're going to give her, something to do, build her up. I mean, come on, use the characters. And there's a lot of characters out there that they did that to. Jane Foster's one. Now Natalie Portman, Jane Foster may as well not exist as a character. Why was she even in Thor 2? I mean, she doesn't do anything, and now she's just absent altogether. And I feel like that's kind of where Pepper Potts is, except they're paying too much money for Gwyneth Paltrow. So they got to use her.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and move on to our collective number 18. Still sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Number 18 is Thor. The first Thor movie. Josh had this ranked at number 19. Don had this ranked as number 18. I had it ranked as number 17. And Darrin had it ranked as number 16. So blue down the line. So Darrin, you were the highest. You want to kick us off? Thor.
Sure. Yeah, I thought actually Thor worked a lot better than it really had any right to do. I thought choosing Kenneth Branagh to direct it was their really smart choice, because he was able to play the film as, a lot of the films that he has done is kind of, a royal family with their infighting and sort of an evolution from an arrogant youth into learning some a certain level of humility. Also, of course, we were introduced to Tom Hiddleston, who Branagh had worked with previously in the Wallander series. If you guys have never seen that, is really quite excellent. So once I saw Loki and I saw who it was, I was like, he's bringing over some people that he knows. And of course, Loki was just one of the best choices for a villain, especially through stage one, is one that has stuck with us throughout all of it. Was a great character for it. Let's see. Tempted to find. it was trying to keep its groundedness and trying to, you know, identify magic as just high technology that we don't understand yet, which I think was a good approach in phase 1. After we kind of got into it later on, we got into phase 3 and our big magic film, you know, we were more willing to embrace it. But I thought that that was at least a good, interesting approach. And they touch on it as sort of advanced magic. They said, even given a little there, saying it's a bit of a blend of things. Yes, the whole Jane Foster bit didn't totally work. I love the little reference. It did have some fun little references. You know, it had the Dr. Blake reference there real quick, which was Thor's old alter ego back originally in the comics, which was kind of fun little bit. We, of course, got more Phil Coulson, which I always appreciate. And we got our little tiny cameo from Hawkeye, just sort of setting things up. So I think from some of the stage 1 films, it did good to start to set up where they were going. Not, again, a fabulous film. I certainly love later on better what some of the changes that they did with the Thor character. But I thought from a first off, I thought that they made some choices that worked really well.
Yeah, and for me, like, I don't know, I really didn't get into the MCU till like around phase 2. So a lot of these phase 1 movies I didn't have very high. This one was forgettable as well, but maybe less forgettable than Dark World. It was a bit more fresh, I guess. It introduced Loki and the other guys. But yeah, I mean, this movie is okay. It's a meh. It's like a definition of a meh movie. It's not offensively bad. It's just there. But anyway, Josh, your thoughts on this?
I don't know. I really didn't like what they did with you know, with Asgard. You know, they're basically the Asgardians. They're aliens. I'm like, no, man, they're freaking gods. Make them gods. Go all in or don't go. That's kind of where I am with Thor, and this being the first film of it is probably my least favorite of the Thor movies.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I like the Thor movie, the first one, a lot. And doing this list, you know, this kind of made me appreciate how good the MCU has gotten. Because as much as I actually did like the first Thor movie, I had to keep on pushing it down the list because I realized there were so many other, you know, movies that were a lot better than this one. And it was just kind of like, oh, no, nope. Man, no, I gotta, okay, nope. Oh, man, no, gotta push, nope. And that one is, okay, I guess you're going down. So that's kind of how it happened for me, where I was sitting there like, oh, nope, that one is better than Thor. But the thing about it is Thor isn't a bad movie, though. You know, you can see some of the flaws in terms of production design a little bit, like with the Albuquerque desert town. It was just kind of like, really? So we just got this little one-horse town in the middle of nowhere. There's like nothing else around. There's no road that leads anywhere. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I've never seen a place like this in real life. But I mean, that also shows you the scope of the limited budget that they were working with back then too, to where I don't think they were able to set the staging as well as later films. But I think it told a pretty decent story, even though I think that Thor's transformation should have taken longer. It should have spanned at least a couple of months rather than a weekend. But no, other than that, I still like the movie. It hasn't aged. It hasn't aged super poorly, but again, you know, judging against the other Marvel films, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's a Phase 1 film, and it's a Phase 1 film. That's all I can say.
I will say something nice about the film. It has one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos.
All right, it's been a while.
The old man driving the truck trying to pull the hammer out.
Okay.
And he's like, did I get it?
I think I preferred him as the strip club DJ. in Deadpool. That's my favorite Stanley cameo. Anyway, cool. So let's move on to our collective number. What are we at? 17. Number 17. So still getting into some of the duds. And it's funny, this actually ranked higher than Thor, but okay. Number 17 is Iron Man 2. Darrin had this at number 19. I had it at number 18. Don had it at number 16. Josh, you were the highest with number 14. So why don't you go ahead and kick off Iron Man 2?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the only Iron Man movie that I don't just actively have a dislike for. I thought the end was great with Iron Man and War Machine teaming up and taking on the suits. That was Iron Man 2, right? I'm not mixing them up. The villain, I mean, Whiplash, not the greatest villain to use for this. That's why it's, not better in my eyes. Whiplash is kind of a throwaway villain. I think they could have gotten a better Iron Man villain to use. But, I mean, I basically enjoyed it. It's probably the only Iron Man movie that I've seen more than twice.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here, but this is like another generic superhero movie I didn't think much about. It's got Mickey Rourke in it acting dumb. Yeah, well, would I say this was my number 18 or number 19? So this is a lot lower to me. For me, this was just like a very, very forgettable, never want to watch again film. Anyway, Darrin, your thoughts on Iron Man 2?
Jon Favreau actually has stated that he didn't know what to do with the sequel. And I think it feels a lot of that. They saw the success of Iron Man. They saw where they could start to go, and it really suffers from forced world building. They're trying to just cram too much development, too much stuff into this film. And again, I think it really suffers for it. Yes, Mickey Rourke's didn't totally work with this because you're mashing two different villains, something that they started doing at this point, where you had a little bit of Whiplash and you had the Crimson Dynamo. You had these two different elements going, which just totally fit, and also sort of removes a lot of the science development that we have with Tony Stark developing the arc reactor. And then here we have this next guy that looks at some basic plans that can instantly shrink it down and knows what to do. So it didn't totally play, I think, very well with that. On the plus side, we did get Sam Rockwell in this, who is just always awesome to watch. Yes, Justin Hammer was not necessarily a great villain. He certainly wasn't scary or frightening, but he did have some decent dance moves. And I think he's just sort of fun to have on the screen. So it does have a few of its pluses, but really overall, again, it suffers from not really knowing what to do and just trying to squeeze in as much different stuff and references and possibilities as you can without really getting a full real film out of it. Though we also did get some Black Widow, which wasn't, I think, the best part of this film. Did also felt forced, but I do like that we established this character that we could start to play and see a little bit more moving forward.
I just want to point out in the Shintaku is saying that this would be his number 20, and he thought it was the Fast and Furious. Basically, I can, but anyway, Don, your thoughts.
Listen, you know what? I don't look at it as disfavorably as many people. Was it a great movie? No, but look, I understand what they were trying to do, and Iron Man, unfortunately, for whatever reason, kind of got the burden of trying to almost be like an Avengers prequel to a certain extent. It did introduce Black Widow. We got more involvement with S.H.I.E.L.D., Justin Hammer and the Hammer Tech things, which, actually does come up in other, actually Netflix series. It's funny, like they bring up a lot of Justin Hammer in the Netflix series, just kind of so it's still tied into the MCU. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, look, it had its flaws. The trailer looks a lot better than the movie. If you chopped it down to the trailer scenes, it probably would have been a better movie. But overall, look, I still like it, but yeah, I do recognize that it had a lot of flaws. Did we lose Mark? Oh no, I think we lost Mark.
Oh dear.
Oh no,
Mark, he's gone. Oh god.
Oh yeah, and yeah, we can't continue with the list because we don't know what the list is.
Yeah.
That's right. If they guess what our we've got a few we got a few extra lists going on in the chat too. A few let's see.
Wait, did he come back?
Oh shit.
Let's see, we've got Jace J. Cameron. There we go.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yeah, you sounded like somebody just smashed in Iron Man's helmet, but oh wait, damn. Jarvis, can someone please, can you please run analysis on Mark's computer? Trying to get us back up. Oh no, sorry, Jarvis is finishing that. Friday, are you there? Hold on.
This is the problem when you're transmitting from the southern hemisphere. They'll get solar storms that we don't get, and unfortunately, that will tend to throw off people's internet's connection. So
hold on, I gotta use the infinity hat. No, didn't do anything. Hold on, what the hell is the reality zone? Yeah. Oh no,
you've actually completely dropped him off now.
You get it back in.
Dude, I just realized what your hat is when you did that. Oh my god, that's awesome.
Perfect.
I knew it was an Avengers hat. I didn't click that it was the freaking Infinity Gauntlet as a hat. That's badass. I bet you it's hot too, huh? Is your head sweating really bad right now?
No. I'm actually not. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Well, it works great with the Thanos T-shirt you got going on there. So yeah, it's all exactly. See, you get a good balance on that, all that.
Yeah. Oh, so for those of you out there while we're waiting for Mark to get back, so you can see we got all 6 stones, the Infinity Gauntlet hat here. Got the inside with nice little Infinity Stones and all that good stuff. And
that's sweet.
I haven't peeled off. See, I haven't really worn this one much. I was waiting for this one forever from where I ordered it from. Didn't even take the damn sticker off.
I know a lot of people who leave the stickers on just like forever.
Yeah, I don't need the damn sticker on them.
Like, I don't know why they leave the stickers on, but I know a lot of people who do.
Okay. Where is Mark?
Well, we lost. He's gone. I don't know.
No, it's 20 because it says he's like
he was shit talking.
Well, if he doesn't get back on, we're going to be completely disconnected because everything goes through his system there. If he doesn't pop back, I think we eventually might get lost. We had a chance last time. He was off for almost like 5 minutes, and we almost lost the whole chat. So, thanks everyone for your patience. Hopefully, you'll be able to get this going pretty soon. We've been waiting for a while. Forgot to take the stickers off. Yeah. It certainly looks like a lot of the Phase 1 films. It's the early films so far that look like they're catching a lot of the bottom of the list group here.
But again, the funny thing is, for the most part, the Phase 1 movies are not, they're still not like terrible, unwatchable movies. they're not Last Jedi level bad, you know.
Yeah, we don't need to get into all of that. I mean,
Let's
we're not talking
read
prequels or nothing here, but
just starting to forget about Last Jedi.
But no, I mean, I think that's where we're talking about. There's a lot of these. I mean, you know, yeah, sure. Phase 1, yeah, you're going to have some missteps, even in the early in Phase 2. You're going to have some missteps because Marvel is still trying to figure out their, you know, their positioning. They're trying to figure out their storyline, what the audience is going to accept, you know, what's going to be too far out there. I mean, certainly by the time we get into later Phase 2, Phase 3 films, they're going to take a lot more risks because the audience, they're finding that the audience is going with them. But early on, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do with an Asgardian? How are you going to tell that story? I mean, that does have certain challenges. And I think with Iron Man, it was so successful, and they were relying a lot on the personality of Robert Downey Jr. and his Tony Stark to carry the film. And almost it was just like, well, you know, almost like the 90s movie star movies, like when you're dealing with a lot of the Stallone and the Schwarzenegger, you have that lead, and they're just trying to stack stuff on top of that. Like, that's all right, we just get him and then throw all this other stuff on, and we'll get away with it. You know, the audience will still come, they'll still pay money. And I think they found out, especially after Iron Man 3 and such, is that no, you've got to put a little bit more into it. You got to take a little bit more time in developing these films, and if you do that, it's going to pay off. So it makes sense in a lot of these.
I think also early in Phase 1, I think it seemed like, you know, as I've watched the films over again, because I watched a couple of them, it seemed like they were almost afraid to make a mistake, which they kind of got over as they got through Phase 2. And like starting with like what I said about Thor, you know, they made the Asgardians aliens instead of gods. Well, once they got Doctor Strange, Peter went away and they went all in with Doctor Strange. I wish they had gotten over that sooner.
All right.
Mark's back.
Cool. See me, hear me, go good? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Great. All right. So let us move on to let's continue the list. I don't know what you guys were talking about when I was gone.
Just kind of recapping Phase 1 and going over that a little bit.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to number 16, our collective number 16, which is The Incredible Hulk. Darrin had this as number 18. Don had this at number 17. I had it at number 13. And Josh had it at number 9. So here I guess we're getting into more of the disagreement. So Josh, you started us off. You had this at your number 9.
Man, I like The Incredible Hulk. I mean, it's a super fun movie. It blew them that Eric, what's his name? Eric Bana, who the hell the guy from Troy. It blew that movie out of the water, and so maybe that makes it it elevates it a little bit, you know, in my view. But I thought Ed Norton did a fantastic job. Arwen, I thought she was okay, kind of a throwaway character. I didn't think she really super needed to be there. But man, for a Hulk, like the only part of that movie that I look at and I go, is when the scientist guy who helps create the abomination, whoever he is, I forget, and he gets smacked and his head swells up like freakishly large. That's the only part of that movie that I cringe at. The rest of it I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, this is number 13 on my list. So I had it somewhat high too. To me, this would be in the run of 7s of averagely good MCU movies. I liked Edward Norton as Hulk, although I do like Mark Ruffalo as well. And I'm disappointed we don't have another Hulk solo movies. I actually like the Hulk solo movies, and I totally agree with Josh. This blew the Eric Bana one out of the water. It was much better. And I saw this. This is actually one of the first MCU movies I've really gotten into. I think I agree. Like the villains weren't that interesting, the plot, whatever. But I do like the character study and the way Edward Norton played this character. So yeah, I actually like this film. But so now you guys who hate it, you go ahead and tell us why.
Another thing I want to point out before we move on is origin movies tend to have a problem with pacing. Like it drags in the beginning as we're waiting for the hero to become a hero, and then it like sprints to the end. Hulk didn't have that problem. It's like we get his origin in the opening credits, which is the best possible way to do his origin.
Darrin, do you want to go? Or Don, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't hate the movie. I mean, it was at number 17 on my list, but I didn't love the movie though. You know, I wanted to love the movie. Hulk is one of my favorite characters of all time, and it was like when I saw the movie, I was like, it's okay. I mean, that's kind of how I felt about that one. You know, visually, it was pretty good. And then, you know, what the thing about it too, and this might be a little bit of my New York bias peeking through, but I hate when they film stuff in downtown Toronto and then try to tell you that it's supposed to be New York City. I'm getting sick and fucking tired of that shit. Okay? And so, I mean, like, again, it doesn't take away from the story. I think the story was actually pretty good. But, yeah, some of the, I don't know, something about it. And it's not just the fact that they weren't in New York when they, you know, said that they were. But something about it just kind of had me like, yeah, it was okay. I mean, that's about all I can say. It was okay.
Yeah, I like Incredible Hulk a lot. I was very excited when Edward Norton was coming in to be Banner. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be fascinating. This is gonna be interesting. And there were definitely, again, some moments that were really good with that. Certainly, yes, compared to the Ang Lee Hulk film. Just, yeah, this is by far so much better. So much more of an actual Hulk character, which I thought was great. Now, it did lean on to removing the kind of origin story, which I think some of the other films in the MCU maybe leaned into a little bit more hand. Maybe we didn't need to see quite so much origin. To me, I kind of liked the origin of the Incredible Hulk, so I was kind of curious. I kind of missed seeing that. Just having it shoehorned in at the beginning, I thought was maybe a little bit overly rushed. And it also, while I liked its playing back and sort of references to the old 70s Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk series, certainly with the way that he became the Hulk, the machine and stuff, and the little, the stuff on his head and the aim. I mean, there's a lot of references. There's even musical references in when he is coming back from Argentina. They're playing the old Incredible Hulk song. You know, I thought was a nice throwback, was nice and appreciated. But it also suffers from the success of Iron Man right before it. Because that had done so well, they shoehorned in a lot of Stark Enterprises stuff into the film, and it sort of felt a little forced. So to me, it kind of threw off some of the pacing and threw off some of the feel to it. We also had some attempts at world building. We had the leader, who is being referenced there. He was getting the drop in, and he's got the big forehead. So we have a little bit of that. But that never played out. We also have a Doc Samson reference, which honestly I didn't catch until like 2 years later, that's who Betty's boyfriend was supposed to be. And I didn't like his character at all. So looking at him and becoming Doc Samson, to me, it didn't really work. So yeah, there were some references that they tried to play in with it that never sort of panned out, and I felt that was a little bit lost. I loved seeing the Abomination. I thought Tim Roth was interesting in with the film. But the other thing is while I thought Norton's Banner was interesting, I also thought that it was a bit too action-oriented from what we expect Bruce Banner to be as more of the geek scientist. So, you know, again, they were playing with some ideas that some worked and some didn't. Overall, I did really enjoy the film. I rewatch it. I just think that it suffers from a little bit of forced world building and making some promises that never really ended up panning out.
Real quick before you move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, just to piggyback off of what Darrin was saying about the world building. I like the world building, and unfortunately, because Edward Norton happens to be a dick, we didn't get the sequel that we could have gotten. And you know, because of that, Marvel just kind of decided. I mean, if you think about it, Marvel has almost put that aside as like, it's there, but it's not there. We're just not going to mention that. And so that's why we have no more Betty, which I'm still wondering why the hell, and we'll get to this when we talk about Age of Ultron, but why the hell Betty Ross isn't brought back at all. You know, the leader, they didn't do anything with the leader. They had a perfect opportunity. Doc Samson, yeah, I wasn't really happy with that particular casting for Doc Samson, but yeah, you know, shout out to Edward Norton. Thank you for screwing the Marvel universe, you bastard.
They did bring back William Hurt's character, though.
That's true. Oh, and also the question that we had is also echoed in the chat that we had brought up. The main reason there hasn't been another solo Hulk film, for those that don't know, the distribution rights for Hulk, for any solo film, still lies with Universal, who did the distribution for Incredible Hulk, that Disney hasn't been able to get back. So that's why the Hulk is being used in other films, in the Avengers films and Ragnarok and stuff, but hasn't had his own solo film. And some people wonder, kids, is it just because he's difficult to use as a solo character? That may or may not be the choice, but the business reasons behind it is because Universal still has it, and they haven't been smart enough to try and make a Sony-type deal to share those rights.
Yeah, I think it's all business related. Personally, I think they could do the good things with the solo film. Anyway, we got to move on. Talks about this enough, so let's move on to our collective number 15. And again, we're getting into massive disagreements here. Number 15 on our list is Captain America: The First Avenger. This was my number 20. This was my number 20. Darrin had it at number 17. Don had it at number 13, and Josh had it all the way up at number 6. So, Josh, do you want to go first with Captain America: The First Avenger?
I mean, what can I say? I'm a Captain America fanboy, and that's really what it boils down to. I thought it was a great origin story. I mean, overall, because I just crapped on origin stories like 5 minutes ago when Mark was lost. But as origin stories go, I think Captain America is probably as good an origin story as you'll ever see. Chris Evans, a perfect choice to play Captain America. I was a little hesitant at first because I'm like, oh, come on, he just played Johnny Storm like a year ago, and now he's gonna be Steve Rogers. But you know what? He's absolutely perfect. He's got the look. He got jacked up for the part. He's you know, a very likable guy in real life, and just like, you know, Steve Rogers would be in fiction. And I thought Elrond, fuck, I don't know his name. I forgot. Hugo Weaving, that's it. Hugo Weaving was a great choice for Red Skull. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. And oh my God, spoiler alert, he's in fucking Infinity War too. My mind freaking exploded when I saw him again. It's just, you know, I really love that movie, and God damn it, I'm not going to apologize for it.
All right, Darrin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I've got to agree actually with a lot of it. I think a lot really went right with this film. Definitely Hugo Weaving as Red Skull in this. By the way, not Hugo Weaving in Infinity War. That's Ross Marquand doing that in Infinity War. Yeah, I know. He did an incredible job. But yeah, I loved seeing the Red Skull with this, that actually really doing a Red Skull and having that look and feel right, I thought was brilliant. The origin was perfect. In fact, there was a discussion where they were going to have someone else play Steve Rogers pre-Captain America and then have Chris Evans come in. And Evans actually pushed hard to say no. He needed to play the pre-Captain America Steve Rogers. They needed to do some computer graphics in order to do that, because that's where everybody connected with the character. And he was spot on right with that. You really started to feel for him. You really identified with him. I loved, one of my favorite scenes from all the MCU was actually in Captain America: First Avenger, where the professor's sitting down with Steve Rogers just before he goes through the procedure and talks about the line is, a lot of people forget the Nazis invaded, the first country the Nazis invaded was their own. And I thought that that's a brilliant line that really puts so many things into sort of a perfect focus. And even Roger's line later on is like, I don't hate anyone. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't like bullies. I mean, really, it was just, there's a lot of great character work that was established in with this that really made me start liking Captain America more, who wasn't a main character for me. You know, Captain America was okay. But with Chris Evans playing him, he really brought something that really got me attracted to this character. The one real problem that I did have with the film is the whole montage section. I mean, I understand kind of why they did it, but now that he's Captain America, now that he's got the shield and he's going in and he's starting to go after Hydra, they do that big montage bit, and I felt a little cheated. And I think a few other people, the audience members, felt a little bit that way. So there's a lot of great stuff done with it. I think that Joe Johnston did a good job kind of setting up, doing a nice flashback film. We also got Agent Carter, Haley Atwell, who was astounding in that. And I really wish ABC would go back and give her a third season. But yeah, so again, it's a great film. I love a lot of these films. There's just, there is some structural stuff that I think maybe didn't work quite as well. Don, what do you think?
Yeah, listen, Captain America, another one of my all-time favorite characters. Chris Evans is probably one of the most perfectly cast actors for any MCU role, period. And as far as origin stories go, you don't really get much better than this. And as much praise as I'm giving it, it couldn't be higher on the list because of some of the things that you mentioned, Josh. Now that I'm thinking about certain things, I wish they would have had, the scenes with the Hydra agents speaking in German. I think that would have lended a lot of authenticity to it. I mean, I understand it's a period piece. It's Joe Johnston, he as kind of his wheelhouse. There is a certain amount of groundedness that it does kind of lose because they did play it a little more fantastical in terms of trying to, or not even fantastical, but they try to simplify it for the masses or whatever. But I think that I wish they would have taken that extra step just with some of the small details and also not done the montage thing. Draw out his battles across Europe, taking down Hydra bases. I think that would have lended a lot to the movie too. But overall, I mean, I don't really have much bad to say about it. But again, the only reason why it wasn't further up on my list is because it just there were movies that are so much better. And Mark, shame on you, shame.
Montage. This was my least favorite MCU. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I see with me, I never. Can you hear me? Am I blanking? Yeah, you can hear me. Cool. So I never for me, I was never that big into comic books or comic book movies. In fact, it was sort of a mission for me to get into the MCU movies, and some of the later ones really earned it and really attracted me and pushed me in by being outside of the box, being more than just a simple comic book movie. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, this is a very stereotypical comic book. It doesn't really all very generic in terms of plot, in terms of characters, especially the whole thing about him being skinny turns into the journey and fights the Nazis and blah 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 blah. And it was just really, I just really did not like this film. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people disagree, but I just could. To me, this was like, it was hard for me to get through this film. I don't never want to watch it again. But anyway, I don't know if you guys want to respond to that real quick before we move on.
Please
No.
please move on. Oh God, please.
All right, cool. So let's move on to number 14, which is Age of Ultron. The Avengers Age of Ultron is our number 14. 15, Darrin had it number 14, Josh had it number 13, and I had it at number 12. So I guess I'm the highest on this. But again, it goes boom, boom, boom down the line like this. I'm not sure if I like the movie more than you guys, but I guess like just the way it ranked a bit higher for me. This movie is fine. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It was kind of disappointing follow-up to the first Avengers movies, but it had some good moments in it. It had some good character interactions, as always. It was good getting the introduction of Vision, Scarlet Witch. I thought that was handled very well. Ultron was kind of a generic villain, and the ending third act was kind of a generic ending third act, but it's enjoyable comic book flick. So yeah, a decent film. That's all I have to say about it.
I guess I'm next. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're getting into the area of the list now where it's all stuff that I really liked. I mean, yeah, Captain America, I had it 6 on my list, but like this is really kind of almost the perfect spot for Ultron, because I mean, Ultron is a very good movie, but unfortunately it was the sequel to Avengers. So it had a very steep hill to climb, and it just couldn't really climb it. It's a really good movie. It was a really brave movie. They freaking killed Quicksilver in it, which was a very courageous choice, I thought. People don't typically, heroes don't typically die in these movies, and they straight up killed Quicksilver. I thought that was fantastic. I basically I enjoyed Ultron. I mean, I've watched it, I don't know, probably 4 times, and dude, it gave us Vision, and Vision's an awesome character. I was kind of apprehensive to see how they were going to handle Vision, and I thought they did it perfectly. And I hope they bring Ultron back again as a villain. He's a great recurring villain in the comic books, and if they never touch him again, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I think. Oh, go ahead, Don.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I mean, I have to agree with that point about Ultron. I think this is really where you're hitting a lot of the strides where Marvel is falling into the rote of killing all of its villains. And they make some changes in this phase 3 and later on, which I think was really smart to do. Because a lot of these villains, they need to build up. They need to have their moments. They need to sort of develop. And the great thing about comics is that you don't have a lot of these villain deaths. I mean, the heroes are supposed to capture them. That's supposed to be the difference between your heroic characters and your villainous characters. And then you lose a lot of these potentials. On the other hand, Ultron was very cookie cutter, was very blandish. I mean, they were trying to make him to be big and powerful and knowing, and yet he can't remember that small humans are called children. And when he takes off Claw's arm, he makes a comment like, "Oh, that's going to grow back, right?" I mean, he's befuddled in an odd way, which I think kind of throws off while they're trying to make some fun character choices. I don't think it totally worked really for Ultron, at least not the way that they were sort of playing that out. Yeah, it was great to get the band back together. It was great having the opening battle, and you have that cool group shot that freezes down. That was awesome. And I agree. bringing in Vision was nice, was very cool. I love seeing Paul Bettany as Vision. I thought that was a great casting choice, and that was something I think that Joss Whedon wanted to do even while he was pitching the first Avengers film. He was saying, I don't really know what's about to do with the first one, but the second one should be Ultron, and we've got to have Paul Bettany as Vision. I mean, he had saw that early on. But like a lot of the sequels, yeah, it had difficulty coming off of the momentous film that Avengers was. They were trying to really shoehorn in a lot of building the Infinity Stones ideals, and that sort of took Thor off this whole odd, pointless direction. And so, I mean, there were a lot of missteps. There was a lot of studio trying to get their plan going without necessarily really trusting their directors and trusting those storylines. And I think it played off a lot on the film. So yeah, we got some great moments. I mean, we got the Hulkbuster fight, was awesome, was really well done. But yeah, you had a third act that was like, oh, now we're going to go and take out the world again. Oh, we've got a villain that's going to do this again. And I think that was, I think the film suffered a little bit for it. However, it's an Avengers film, so it was fun.
Cool. I think you guys are done.
I did have a little want to chime down. Controversial statement coming up. Warning. You are going to be triggered. I think Avengers Age of Ultron is the movie that kind of exposed some of the inadequacies of Joss Whedon directing. Look, and don't get me wrong, it's not a horrible film, but I think just like with Tim Burton, when you give certain directors free reign and don't really constrain them and say, yeah, you can, your last movie did amazing, so you can kind of do what you want with the next film. We get Age of Ultron. Much in the way that Batman Returns departed greatly with Catwoman and Penguin. We get an Ultron that resembles nothing of the Ultron from the comic books. I had no problem with the way Vision was constructed because it was kind of almost in the same vein as he was in the comic books. But yeah, something about this film felt kind of off balance. And as you know, I'm all about balance. So yeah, it's like it wasn't a horrible film, but following the first Avengers film and then seeing where Joss Whedon decided to go, and now, mind you, Joss Whedon was saying that there was a bunch of other crazy shit that he wanted to do, and Marvel was like, no, we kind of have a story we're trying to tell here, so you can't just kind of go off the rails and just do anything. It's like we let you do Ultron as a fucking comedian, but rein it in just a little bit. And and again, it's like I wanted to love Age of Ultron because Ultron is a favorite villain. He is a menace beyond belief in the comic books, and to have him, be Robo Tony Stark, it was like, yeah. But yeah, for those of you out there who were thinking it was going to be something that I was going to have a different take, you didn't see that coming.
I don't think it's that controversial. I don't know. Like to me, I think it was more of this. I can kind of see you're coming from, but I think it's more of like you definitely see he was getting a lot of studio pressure. Like he was having to introduce the new Thor movies, having to do this, they want to set up this, they want to set up that, and having to juggle all this while trying to tell a story. I think any reasonable director would be overwhelmed by this, and you could tell that he was like really exhausted for it. So I don't think it's a blemish against him per se. I just think that they were trying to do too much with this film, personally. Anyway, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and move on. So what are we up to now? We're up to number 13. All right, number 13. God. Okay, number 13 on our list is Iron Man, the first Iron Man. Josh had this at number 18. I had this at number 15. Don had this at number 11. And Darrin, this was near number 2. Darrin had this at number 2. So Darrin, why don't you start us out with the first Iron Man movie?
You were all mad. You were all insane for not ranking this film higher. This was a home run right off the bat. This is the movie that established the entire MCU. It is a film that we saw, oh my God, they just put this on the screen, especially with all of the X-Men movies and stuff that always had the black leather twists and the odd things. And God, then you got into X3 and Wolverine and all of that crap. Yes, we had, the whole Nolan Batman trilogy, which was starting off around just before this, that hit a lot of great grounded feels. But this is the first time that we looked at it and, oh my God, they took a comic and they put it on the screen. When they introduced the Iron Man, I mean, first of all, you have the phase 1 armor, the whole breakout, the fact that they took the origin story, was able to perfectly update it to the modern era, setting in Afghanistan instead of Vietnam. You still have him captured. You have the arrogance of Tony Stark. Then you get his first armor set, which they actually did and played it off beautifully. Then you got the phase 2 battle, and then you got the 3, which was amazing. When he goes back to Afghanistan and he does that battle with the tank, when he turns and shoots it and then just walks away as the tank explodes behind him. It was perfect. It was beautiful. We have Tony Stark set. We have Robert Downey Jr. becoming Tony Stark. Without Iron Man, there is no MCU. Period. It set it up. It showed what could be done. It set the stage. It set the tone. And I think it, really it is, I think rightfully number 2. You guys are all mad. This was a beautiful film. And yes, maybe we wanted a little bit more Ironmonger, a little bit more Jebediah Stane, but what are you going to do? You still have Jeff Bridges, and he can sit there and read a phone book and look menacing if he wants to. So, yeah, I think that it is just an astounding film. I thought it was the perfect way to kick off the MCU, and I think it is still, while not the best the MCU has brought, certainly deserves to be at least in the top 5.
The dude was not intimidating or menacing at all. Just to say. Anyway, yeah. Again, I'm coming from a different perspective. Where in fact, full disclosure, during the 2000s, I didn't really like comic book movies. It had to be won over in later movies. So when this film came out, I was just like, it was getting all this hype, and I got it once it got onto DVD, and I'm like, yeah, this is just another comic book movie. It's overrated. Why is everyone making this stink out of it? Now, I do think, in retrospect, I do think it had a lot of great building blocks, and going back and watching it again, I do feel a bit higher on it, which is why it wasn't at the bottom of my list. There are definitely more generic movies that came out after this, but I still don't have that first impression of this just being another comic book movie that's nothing special. But that's just me. I know Darrin will say I'm crazy, but anyway, Josh, your thoughts?
Sorry, you made me choke a little bit with that dude comment. Iron Man, for me, like, you cannot overstate how important this movie was to comic book movies, to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That absolutely cannot be overstated. This is one of the most important movies in the history of comic book movies, maybe the most important movie in the history of comic book movies. That said, I loved it the first time I saw it. I liked it the second time. The third time, I'm like, man, the first act is really boring. And every subsequent viewing, and I've seen it a bunch of times, I've liked it a little bit less. And that's something that I can't say for most of the other Marvel movies.
Wow. I mean, look, I like this movie a lot. I've loved it since the first time I ever saw it. I remember when I first heard about Robert Downey Jr. getting cast. I was like, wow, they're having a real life alcoholic play a fictional alcoholic. I wonder if that's going to be in the movie. Um, so yeah, look, I like the movie a lot. And yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and uh, I think cinema as a whole owes a lot to this movie because this was one of the first times, that people really took uh comic book movies seriously. Batman Begins was a good start, but I think without Iron Man, and then I'm trying to remember, did Dark Knight come out? No, Dark Knight came out later that same year. But without Iron Man, and then follow up with the Dark Knight, and then the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, Edward Norton one. Like cinema in general and Hollywood owe a lot to those three movies in particular because you got A-list actors uh, in very good comic book movies. And yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe owes its start to Iron Man 1, but I don't think it can be beholden to it in terms of like, all right, we have to put it on the pedestal forever. If a better movie comes along, a better movie comes along. And as much as I liked the first Iron Man, yeah, this it still suffers from some of the early Phase 1 problems. But I think that I think Jon Favreau did a great job of covering up for the lack of budget. Um, and I think he told a fantastic story. He was able to find a way to throw in a lot of Easter eggs. They threw in Shield, which was some of the first bit of world building. We get the awesome cameo with Samuel L. Jackson at the end. So yeah, I mean, look, I love the movie, but number two, little too high for me. That's all.
Oh, and a quick correction, just want to throw in, it's the Mark 1, Mark 2, and Mark 3 armor. I was saying Phase 1, and that's how the Marvel movies are set up. So just want a correction before people that watch this later on accuse me of not knowing what I'm talking about, which is often true, but just not in this case.
Cool. All right, cool. So let us go ahead and move on. Let's move on to our number 12. Number 12 on our collective, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, full disclosure, before I get in, Josh has not seen this movie yet, and we have agreed beforehand. Said I needed to put it somewhere on this list in order because of the system I'm using. So we agreed beforehand that it would be an automatic 11 for him, which is pretty much right in the middle, because I didn't think it was fair to put it at the end or at the top because he hasn't seen it. So just put it in the middle. But so spoilers here. But for us who have seen it, it ends up ranking at number 12. At number 14, Darrin had this. No, both me and Darrin had this at number 10. That's how it ranks. I guess I'll go first. We're tied for this. To me, this is number 10 is like the middle of the list is pretty much exactly where I would put this film. There's some things about it really good, like the way things would shrink and grow big and throw it, like the action sequence was really good. Although I will say this movie in particular was one that I was thinking was ruined by the trailers. The trailers gave too much away. It gave away almost all the good parts of the film. So when I actually went and see it, I didn't feel like I got that much higher with it. But I don't think it was as good as me. And I did like some of the characters seemed almost like halfway, but it was still a very enjoyable, very fun movie. So to me, this is like my definition good time, non-offensive Marvel movie special. So the middle of the look put it. Anyway, Darrin.
Yeah, I thought this took a lot of the premise of the first film and really built on it. You know, I liked it a little bit more than Ant-Man, though I guess I see that Ant-Man's going to end up ranking higher, which I am perfectly fine with. Like I said, we're in the center of the pack where I could sort of mix a lot of these films out into any ranking and be sort of perfectly fine with it. Yeah, the new combat sequences was great. Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp, her action stuff I thought was awesome, especially building on the sort of play that Ant-Man originally sort of set up as sort of figuring things out, where she takes it in a much more graceful, much more understanding, somebody that fully understands how to work this system to the best of her ability. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was in the previews that was in the movies, but on the other hand, a lot of the previews really only focused on the first maybe 20 minutes of the film, which left a lot of area that we didn't know was going to happen, certainly with a great villain. And I love what they did with this film, which they had started a little bit earlier on in the movies, and sort of in some of the beginning of phase 3, a little bit of change here of not killing your villains. I love the fact that they made the villain less evil and more damaged. You start to sympathize with the villains, and they're finding a way to, maybe these aren't evil people that we have to finish, but ones that we have to save and fix. I mean, that we have Goliath there, you know, as sort of I love the little twist that we had on there. The girl who played,
don't spoil the movie for Josh.
Oh, I'm sorry. But the one who played the guy, without getting into spoilers, the lady who plays Hannah John Kamen, if I'm remembering her name correctly offhand, who is in Killjoys on Sci-Fi, I think was great. In fact, I was watching the film for a while and I was trying to figure out where I had seen her from. I think she played it really well. And then, of course, it was a nice way of building onto some of the consequences of the previous films while actually playing and then giving hints of what's going to happen without spoiling the movie itself, without spoiling the movie, the story that it was telling. So I thought that they did a really good job at sort of balancing all that and just, you know, having a fun little adventure. I really enjoyed watching this. All right.
I guess I'll go with this one. Look, I like the Ant-Man and the Wasp a lot. You know, for me, it was kind of a toss-up as to which one was better between that one or the first one. Like you guys said, took the action from the first one, built on it, you know, added some good characters, and you know, look, I got it on pre-order already. You know, it'll be part of the collection. Yeah, I'm not gonna miss this one. So, yeah, man, you know, since we don't want to spoil anything for Josh, I'm just gonna end it there.
Was that Josh? You were muted. Where you?
I was gonna say you can go ahead and spoil it. It's fine. I mean, I've got a 7-month-old baby. Going to the movies just isn't going to happen for a while. I'm totally resigned to everything getting spoiled. It's fine. I do want to say though. I mean, I probably would have liked this movie. I liked Ant-Man a lot, so I probably would have liked Ant-Man and the Wasp too.
Cool. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and move on to our number 11. Number 11 on our collective list is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So Darrin had this at number 13. I had this at number 11. Josh had this at number 10. And Don had this at number 9. We're all pretty much on the same page. But Don, you want to go first?
Yeah, I like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a lot. You know, it deepened the story from the first one. You know, we got to see how this team has become a family over the time that they've been together. We get the backstory about Yondu and why it was he had Peter Quill in the first place. Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell. I mean, is there much more to be said? You know, and you know, even though they did change Ego, I don't think it was like a totally negative change. You know, again, I like the fact that we got deeper into Star-Lord's character, and you know, I think that this movie did a good job of building on what we already knew without going back and treading old ground. So that's what I really liked about the film. Yeah, I mean, you know, not much else to say there. Darrin, you're up.
I liked a lot of Guardians 2. To me, what it really suffered from was being almost instantly forgettable. While the first one I thought was really astounding and really introduced these characters, for some reason it's one of those where I literally, once I watched it, I kind of forgot. I bought the DVD, the Blu-ray, because I buy all of them. But I don't even know if I've bothered to pop it back in yet. I love Kurt Russell, and certainly the choice that you can get Ego and make that character work, a living planet, was astounding. And of course, choosing Kurt Russell for anything is always the right move. The CGI worked enough, and of course, we have seen so much of Kurt Russell. He's been so prevalent throughout films for the past umpteen years. We all know what young Kurt Russell works like, and so it was fun to see him back and doing his thing. On the other hand, like I said, it's kind of forgettable. Yes, we get a little bit of more Yondu, but we kind of have that storyline of like, oh, my real dad is a dick, but my fake dad has been the one being there all the time. I mean, that's kind of a tropish films telling right there. The whole idea of the Ravagers with a code, Sylvester Stallone kind of kicking out Yondu and that whole thing. I mean, I thought Stallone was, yeah, why was he in here? I was expecting something more, and it was just kind of to me, a slightly annoying character. I don't know. To me, that felt a little bit off. Though on the other hand, we also had Mary Poppins, y'all. So, I mean, pluses and minuses, sure, was a good time. I just felt that it was, I don't know, it was one of those MCU films that just didn't really stick with me afterwards.
Yeah, so this was another film that I enjoyed, but I didn't think was anything special. Drax is really annoying in this film. I didn't find him funny. I just found him annoying. But I loved Baby Groot. I'm sorry, one of those people I can. He's so cute and so funny, so it was a good part. The main story with Kurt Russell as the Ego, I kind of thought was generic. I wasn't that invested in it, or the whole Yondu thing. I'm sorry, but I wasn't brought to tears by the ending. I think they were just trying to bring me to tears, and I just wasn't that affected by his death. Sorry. But overall, I enjoy the chemistry between the characters. It's always good. It kept that from the first film, so it makes it a really enjoyable, interesting film to watch. So yeah, a good movie, but not great.
The most impressive, and first of all, I love both Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The most impressive thing about this one, and Darrin, you already brought it up, is pulling off Ego the Living Planet. When I found out that that's what they were doing, I was like, oh God, this could be either really cool or it could be awful, and there's not going to be an in-between. And it was really cool, and Kurt Russell absolutely nailed it. He nails everything. I think he got to start on Gilligan. He was great in that too. And I mean, I think where it kind of falls short is it had the unenviable task of following Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy kind of set this different tone for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then going back to it, it did feel like a little tiny bit of a rehash. Babe, the cat's getting into your food over there. Sorry about that. So it felt like a tiny bit of a rehash. It kind of felt, I don't know, it's like we've seen this tone before. And it's one of the flaws with Ragnarok, which I'll get into later. But I really, really enjoyed this movie. I did not think it was forgettable at all, so I'm going to disagree with Darrin there. But, dude, pulling off Ego the Living Planet is just, oh my gosh, absolutely phenomenal.
Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to try to speed things up a little bit because we are running a little bit behind. But anyway, let us get into our number 10, which is Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange, Darrin, Josh, and Don all had this rated at number 12. This was my number 6. So I was by far the highest on Doctor Strange. And for me, this is I put it sort of the best of these middling 7-rated films. And that's just because I enjoy the visuals. I like good visual movies. And I went into this expecting like really good visuals from the trailer, and it delivered. And I thought we got a lot of stuff that wasn't in the trailer that really worked. I didn't like the fact that they made I would have liked this film a lot better, but the fact that they made Doctor Strange just another version of Tony Stark, I was a bit less on. I think they could have went in new directions instead of trying to fall back on the same sarcastic, cocky character. But other than that, what really puts up high ending, which I absolutely loved, and I will spoil. To me, this rare MCU movies that didn't have a stereotypical sky beam, let's attack the bad guy, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it started out that way, but his final resolution to it by having a time loop that basically having an impasse where the villain could never win was such an inventive way. It was so unique, something unique to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is why it ranks as number 6 for me. Apparently liked it higher, better than you guys did. But anyway, you guys' thoughts on Doctor Strange?
I really, really enjoyed Doctor Strange. The only thing is there are other films that I liked a little bit better. Doctor Strange to me is where the Marvel Cinematic Universe really just kind of the minds behind everything stopped being afraid, and they just went all in. Between Doctor Strange and Ant-Man, that's when the Marvel Cinematic Universe really felt like it was fully formed to me, and they were like, we're doing it, let's go full speed. And oh my gosh, I mean, the visuals were astounding. Perfect choice for Stephen Strange with Benedict Cumberbatch. And yeah, I mean, it was 12, I think, on my list. That's not like saying that, oh, I didn't like it. It's just that I liked others a tiny bit more. That's really all it is.
Yeah, I'm right with you. In fact, I happened to watch Doctor Strange the other night, and rewatching it, I may have actually should have put it a little bit higher on the list. But like I said, this kind of center section is almost dependent upon what day of the week it is, where I rank things. Yeah, the visuals were astounding. I love them embracing the weirdness and possibilities of this larger universe, especially the multi-dimensions and everything like that. There was some great storytelling done with that, and certainly that end twist with doing the time loop and everything like that was a great way to change things out right there. I thought was beautifully done. But like you, Mark, what the film suffered from was a cookie-cutter origin story where you're placing Doctor Strange too much like Tony Stark. Now, afterwards, as we've seen even in briefly in Ragnarok and in Infinity War, we have a much fuller form Doctor Strange. And part of me thought that the movie actually suffered from doing an origin story here, where maybe we should have, like they did in Hulk here, though I would have liked an origin a little bit more there, is do a quick origin or flashback origin and really start to deal with Strange more as a developed sorcerer and really more of that type of personality. Because yeah, the quippiness I thought didn't really work for the character. Once he has lost that in later films, I thought that it is a much stronger character. It makes him unique. Here, he was just a little bit too much Tony Stark-ish. And then I thought that his origin and development was all a little rushed so you could get to the point at the end. But that being said, still a great work into the MCU. I love that they had done a Doctor Strange movie, and I really want to see a lot more of this dimensional travel and this use of magic.
Yeah, I will say that I like this movie a lot. Yeah, and even though yes, the first act is definitely the same first act as Iron Man. But other than that, I liked Doctor Strange's development over the movie. The visuals were absolutely amazing, and there's also the whole point that it's in New York when it says it's in New York. I know it's petty, but I don't care. I loved it, and yeah, man, definitely. There are other movies that I like better, but I definitely love Doctor Strange.
Cool. So let's. Oh, go ahead, Darren.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, the one thing I did really like about his origin is that car crash. If there is ever a perfect visual lesson of not texting and driving, it's right there. My daughter still creeps when she thinks about those fingers getting crushed. She's like, ha, 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 ha. So that was beautiful.
Cool. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and move on to our number 9. So we're in the top 10. Well, 10 out of 20, so it's like the half. But number 9 is Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man movie. So Darren had this at number 11. Josh had this at number 8. And both me and Don had this at number 7. Don, are you there? If you're there, you go first because I know what's coming next. So Don,
Okay,
you want to start off with Ant-Man?
Yeah, so I loved the first Ant-Man. It was a much different story than we've seen from a lot of comic book movies. It got into the origin, but yet it was like, yeah, we already had one Ant-Man, but this is the new Ant-Man. So I love the fact that it was like, it was passing the torch in a movie where you didn't already have a pre-established character, but they did enough to show you that Ant-Man was already around, so you felt as though he was part of the world, and just the tragedy that he had made him decide to go away. And now you have this guy who's trying to redeem himself in the eyes of his daughter, and the visuals were absolutely amazing. The concept of taking small things, blowing them up, making big things small, using that stuff as weapons, and the hijinks. I mean, I like the movie a lot, and for me, like, I ranked it higher than Ant-Man and the Wasp because I think this one had more of an impact for me. I like Ant-Man and the Wasp a lot too, but I think just in terms of introducing new concepts, I think this had a greater impact for myself.
Yeah, and I ranked this higher than Ant-Man and the Wasp because I do think it did a better job at the character stories involved. You really got invested in the character, particularly the Scott. It was very interesting and see his plight, like, coming out of prison. I love the little commentary they threw in. It's like, oh, I'm sure you'll be able to get a good job in next time. He's working at Subway and sort of trying to stay away from that and having a daughter to look after. But on top of that, he's giving this like superhero suit that gives him powers. And I like the dynamic. I like the comedy. The villain was, the bald dude from House of Cards, kind of throwaway, but most Marvel villains are. But yeah, the character stories, the comedy really worked. I thought it was a really good comedic movie. So yeah, that's why it ranked a bit higher for me.
This is probably the only Marvel movie where when I found out they were making it, I was legitimately worried that it was going to be bad. Like, I was concerned about how Guardians 2 was going to pull off Ego, the Living Planet. I was worried that Ant-Man was going to be a bad movie. And so when I got into the theater, and it was an utter delight from start to finish. Oh my gosh, it's one of, well, I mean, a long list of favorite movies. It's one of my favorite movies. Like I said, they're all kind of interchangeable at this point. Like what Darren said, it doesn't matter where you put them on the list because it's like we're talking incremental likitude or something. But just the visuals, like the fight on the train set at the end is one of my favorite fight scenes in all of Marvel. When the Thomas the train engine goes clank and falls over, oh my god! Because like when they're small, you're like totally invested and you're like, oh my god, a train's coming, and then they flip it on its head and it's just. And the kind of the whole movie kind of does that. Like they took an origin story, like Don said, and made it a passing of the torch story. They kind of flipped the whole thing on its head, and it worked so well. And it was a very pleasant surprise of a movie for me. Oh wow, I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, 2 words: Paul Rudd. Really, everybody loves Paul Rudd. He was perfect casting in this. He really did just bring it's just an instant likability to the character. Then you add in Michael Pena, who was just hilarious in this film. I mean, you get his storytelling. I mean, everything in that. The whole scene where he's just like, back it up, back it up, back it up. I mean, it was just every little line with him was awesome. Yeah. Baskin Robbins always finds out. I mean, it was great. Again, this was one of those where Marvel had already started to do this, starting blending genres, and this was really kind of another one of those perfect mixes. It's where you see that a superhero film is a genre modifier. It doesn't have to be a straight genre itself. This is a heist film with superheroes in it, and I thought that was sort of a great choice. Yeah, Corey Stoll, I think, was a little bit wasted. You didn't, I mean, he's a little cookie cutter villain. He's just the good guy, but now, villainous. I like the idea that he had a developing madness because of being exposed to the Pym particles, but they never really delved into that. They didn't really explore that, and that's one thing that I thought was a little bit wasted. But they did have some great visuals. Yeah, that fight scene on the Thomas the Tank Engine is perfect and beautiful. And I love the visual telling, how they did the shrinkage and the way they were able to visually tell that, the camera choices that they had chosen, I thought was really well done. It made it interesting instead of just looking like, my Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This had a much more realistic, a much more interesting feel to it. So yeah, just a lot of great choices and really starting to set up this larger world, which they really eventually dived into with the rest, with all of Phase 3, considering that Ant-Man was actually the end of Phase 2.
Cool. So let's go ahead and move on to our number 8. Now, these next couple of films are where me and Josh are going to be at odds. We sort of sabotage each other here. But let's start with our number 8, which is Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok at number 8. Josh had this at number 16. Both Darrin and Don had this at number 6. This is my number 1. Number 1 MCU movie, Thor Ragnarok. And I just watched this again recently just to make sure I still felt this is the best Marvel movie, and I totally do. This has everything I want in the movie. It has a good, well-constructed story, has interesting characters, good character stories. I think this definitely has the best character stories of all the Marvel movies, has the best humor of all the Marvel movies, although that might be my bias as an adopted Kiwi. I'm a huge Taika Waititi fan. I love his work and I love his style on this film. Particularly love the Korg, the rock thing. Love the humor in this film. And the visuals were amazing, in my opinion. And maybe this is coming from like a film school graduate who likes the visual style. I think this has some of the best visuals in the entire MCU, particularly the scenes where we get the flashback of the Valkyrie attacking Hela. Like, that was stunning. That was amazing. And the battle sequences we have on the bridge to the Led Zeppelin music was... Watching it now brings tears to my eyes. I can't tell you how much I love those action sequences. Just as the best use of music, in my opinion, action sequences I can see. Josh balking. But yeah, so this was by far my favorite MCU movie anyway. Darrin, do you want to go next?
This was the most metal film that ever was. Yeah. It was awesome. It was great. I loved it. Yeah, it was just, oh my God. This is Thor done right. Bringing Taika Waititi to reinvent this character, reapproach. I mean, God, see Chris Hemsworth, not only a big, beautiful man, but funny as hell. He has no right to be able to combine all of these elements. And of course, having Goldblum in it was perfect. The visuals, the colors on it. My God. I mean, again, we're getting into the realm of films here where, to me, they were just, it's so hard to start to pick which one is better. I love this film. The comedy was great. I love the whole buddy idea. I love the confused Banner, we have, and the great fight. God, that visual when Hulk comes out and Thor's all like, yes! And he tries to tell his story, and then Hulk just kind of like beats the crap out of him. I mean, almost wins, but, obviously the change of the whole God thing. I mean, it was awesome. We have Korg, who is a great side character. And the fact that, yes, while they take out the villain, they don't kill the villain. It's one of those inventive ideas is, no, let the two villains take each other out. Fulfill the prophecy and all that, which you weren't expecting to be the way to do. Again, it was an inventive way of figuring this out, which could have been a very dour, sad, dark film. They made bright and funny and engaging with just, right off the top, that whole discussion where he's hanging there and he's talking to Sutor and he's like, hold on, wait a minute, I'm coming back around. I mean, it was just, there were so many great moments with this film. Yeah, it was just, I don't think it's number one. My number one is the number one. The rest of you were wrong. But yeah, this is definitely deserves to be the top 10, if not even higher. It's an amazing film, and I love every moment of it.
Real quick, I can't believe I forgot to mention Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum was so great. This is Jeff Goldblum as absolute best. Anyway, Don, before Josh trashes this movie, Don, do you want to go next?
Yeah. See, and this is what I was talking about at the top of the damn video, Josh, you bastard. Anyway, so yeah, look, I loved Thor Ragnarok. I mean, listen, adding the Planet Hulk elements in there, adding the Ragnarok storyline from the comic book in there. We got the introduction of Hela. We got Surtur. We got, Goldblum at his most Goldblum. I mean, look, it was visually stunning. It was funny. It showed off Chris Hemsworth's range, because before this, you never really got to see him do comedy as far as the MCU is concerned. And I think it was a compelling story because you had the hero who basically had it all, everything stripped away from him. Then he, battled his way back. It was, great kind of redemptive arc. And even though it didn't end happy, it still ended happy. If you get my drift on that one. I thought it was a fitting end for the character of Odin, because this was kind of the passing the torch, and it's the lessons that he imparted upon his sons, but it also was the sins of the father coming back, and it was like, oh, Dad, why didn't you tell us about the bullshit you used to do? Yeah, man, but I love the movie, but not my particular number one, only because I'm a little bit more of a dramatic, like I love drama films just a tad bit more. But no, I have no problem with it being your number one. I do have a problem with it being someone's number 16 or 18 or whatever the fuck it was that Josh decided to make it. Go ahead, God damn it.
Okay. Thor Ragnarok is a giant missed opportunity to tell a very emotional, serious, impactful story. Multiple serious, impactful, emotional stories. And they botched it and turned it into a comedy rock opera, and it was bullshit. Thor losing his hammer, losing his home. This, I mean, oh my God, there's so much they could have done here and really kind of hit you right in the feels, and they just didn't. And I'm sorry. I mean, hate me all you want in the comments. I fully expect to lose subscribers over this. Do what you got to do. Jeff Goldblum is fucking overrated.
Hey.
A little Jeff Goldblum goes way is enough. A little Jeff Goldblum goes a very long way, and he was in that movie for 20 minutes too long. Oh my God. Thor could not be the comedy relief. I mean, yeah, the Rock guy was funnier than Thor, but he was in the movie for a fucking second and a half. Thor should not be the comedy relief in his own movie.
I will say that you do have a strong supporter. Steven in the chat is totally on your side.
Steven's a very smart man.
Well, you guys just have different opinions. I'll put it
but basically, they took Thor and they tried to make it Guardians of the Galaxy, and it just didn't work for me.
Fair enough. You know where I stand. Anyway, Kill. So let's flip the spectrum here, Josh. Well, let's get in to our number 7, which is Captain America: Civil War. Captain America: Civil War was my number 14. Darrin had this as his number 8. Don had this as his number 4. Josh, this is your number 2. Start us off. Why is Captain America: Civil War so awesome?
Because it's basically Avengers 3, and it's so much better than Ultron. Captain America: Civil War is not really a Captain America movie. It's a team up movie, and the teams fighting each other, and the story was super engaging, and I really kind of felt where Ragnarok kind of fell off, where I felt no emotions. I felt super emotions in this movie when Tony and Steve, they're supposed to be best kind of best buds, but also kind of frenemies, kind of a thing. And they butt heads finally and go toe to toe. That final fight between those two guys, the choreography in that fight, even though most of it was probably CGI, was fucking awesome. Oh my God. I thought the group fight with the two opposing factions, I thought that was awesome. With Giant Man, that was a huge surprise. I was like, holy shit, it's Giant Man. Fist pump in the movie theater. Spider-Man, even though they spoiled it in the trailers, which I don't think they should have done, they should have kept that as under wraps as they possibly could have, and made that reveal in the theater for people seeing it for the first time. Spider-Man was awesome. And I mean, there's not much not to like in this movie. I'd be interested to see why you guys didn't have it higher on your lists.
I mean, well, it was number 4 on my list. So I mean, like, it made it into my top 5. I mean, look, for any movie to make it into my top 5, period, it must be amazing. Listen, I liked it a lot. I think that it took, for one, very fitting and I think so far the best trilogy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Fitting end to Captain America for Steve Rogers for his storyline. Because for one, it's him and Bucky all the way. It shows the progression of where Steve Rogers was ultra patriot, whatever the government said was the correct thing to do, to where now it's like, he now, instead of things being black and white, he has a more nuanced view of the world. It brought the Avengers back, and I mean, like, yes, it was kind of Avengers 3 or 2.5. But it was very much a Captain America movie. This was a Captain America movie because it mainly focused on the story with him and Bucky, and the kind of B and C plots were Sokovia Accords and the Black Panther Revenge story. I think this did a great job of world building without seeming convoluted. And even though it bears absolutely no similarity to the story that its namesake from, I still think it did a phenomenal job. But there are just a couple of movies I think did a little better. I mean, and when I say a little, we're talking about very small increments. I mean, Captain America: Civil War could have been someone's number one, and I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
Yeah, Civil War was an astounding film. I mean, that is probably one of the most comic book movies of all of the MCU. How we got all of these characters in. I mean, you got Black Panther introduced, you got Spider-Man introduced, and then you take Captain America, who, yes, has gone from being the very much, for a country, for the right thing, for the bigger reasons, now coming in and making choices that are all for very personal reasons. So it's a great a great arc for that character. Yeah, an astounding battle sequence. Both the big one in the airport with everyone going after each other was beautifully done. Again, a wonderful use of Spider-Man instantly engaging that character and doing it right. How everybody in the audience was like, finally, this is how Spider-Man's supposed to be talking constantly and throwing people off. I mean, even, what's his name? Not Bucky. It's not Bucky. It's says it.
Falcon.
Usually there's fight. Thank you. There's not this much talking in a fight. I mean, that was kind of perfectly done. Even the whole, have you ever seen this old movie, Empire Strikes Back? I mean, really showing the age difference. So much of that was beautifully done. And yes, while a lot of people weren't excited about Zemo, the best thing that this film did, and I don't think a lot of people really appreciate this is the first film where the villain wins. The villain's plan succeeds. He splits up the Avengers. Yes, they don't kill each other, but he accomplishes exactly what he wanted to do. And I thought that was beautifully done. And then having Black Panther, who was so much after revenge for the death of his father, realizing the whole scope of all of this and sparing his life so that he actually has to kind of suffer in jail and have it straightened out that there's no easy exit out of all of this. I thought there were so many great choices that were done in this film. And yeah, I mean, it's in my top 10. It could have been higher for sure. There are a few other films that I think managed to hit points a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. But overall, yeah, this is, again, we're getting into the films where they're all awesome. And I thought that Civil War was kind of a perfect blend of wrapping up that kind of Captain America trilogy, really being just so comic book and yet working so tremendously well.
Okay, so now I know how Josh felt when we were talking about Ragnarok. So Stephen in the chat says, I'm surprised this wasn't Mark's 20. And it's not my 20. I don't hate this film. It was my number 14, so it was like towards the bottom of the 7 mediocre, because there are things I like about the film. I like the introduction of Black Panther. I like Captain America's character story through this film. I think it really works. And some of the interpersonal scenes with them juggling all these characters, I really enjoyed. But I really don't think it's that good of a movie. Mainly, well, there's one thing, the fight scene at the airport, it was cool to see, but to me it felt like Nerf football. Like there were no real stakes and no one was really out to hurt each other, and it was just like, oh, let's have this little thing. And I totally completely side with Captain America. I think Iron Man was being a dick in this film. I don't take his side at all. And also, there was a lot of character twists, particularly with Iron Man at the end of the film, that I did not buy. But I'm skating around the real issue I have with this film. And the real issue I have with this film is Zemo. To me, he is by far the worst villain in the entire MCU. This was the only time I was in a public movie theater, a crowded movie theater, and when they revealed Zemo's plot, I literally, in the middle of the crowded movie theater, I shouted, "Oh, come on!" That's like, it was the most ridiculous, convoluted, like, Screen Junkies, I think, did it best because they had an honest trailer for that, and they're like, "Oh, let's go to Zemo's plan." They had like a 20-point Zemo plan, and it's like, this is point A, this is point 6B, this is point. Like, his plan is so convoluted. Now, I heard tons of fans trying to say, "Oh no, they actually explained how he accomplished all this in the film." Fine, whatever, but I still don't buy that he was able to accomplish this. I don't buy, and there's a lot of like huge plot holes. Like, if his whole plan was to get Iron Man to get pissed off at Captain America by showing him the video of Winter Soldier killing his father, which again I had an issue with, but leaving that aside, if that was his whole plan, why not just send it in the email? Why come up with let's set this up and this up here and put this here and put that there and do this here? It's a pet peeve of mine when plots are way too convoluted. And if they had a better villain and a better plot around, it seemed like they could have actually taken Zemo out, and then I would have liked this film. I would have thought it was a good film if they would have just taken him out. But anyway, I said my piece. If you guys
have a short rebuttal.
Okay.
The thing about Baron's, his plan is super complicated, and they don't go into this at all in the film, and they should have. Baron Zemo is a fucking super genius. His plan is convoluted, and it works because he's a fucking super genius, and they don't go into that at all in the movie, and they should have.
Well, I'm just going off of what I see on film, and on film, he wasn't presented that way.
I think also it's presented as I think a lot of people this is all one giant plan. I think he had several plans that he had to keep adjusting for because he was trying to get the information. He didn't get that when he couldn't get it from the guard. That forced him to then go and frame Bucky so he could get Bucky into custody so that he could try and get the information from him. Once he was able to do that, then he had to go out to fucking suburbia or whatever it is, go out to Russia in order to get the plan because that's where the video was so that he could show it to there. I think he had several plans and he just had to adjust depending on what was going on. I don't think that was necessarily played out very well, and so it makes it look like some giant convoluted 50-part plan. But I think it was a little bit more straightforward. He just had if this doesn't work, then he's got backup areas that he was falling into. Yeah, that may not have been shown out, but I don't think it was quite as complex as people are often portraying.
One thing I want to say, though, is the way a lot of people feel about the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 is how I feel about the red herring with the other Winter Soldiers or whatever. That pissed me off. I would have been more interesting if they just went with that. And especially because they did that red herring in order to reveal it was Zemo's plan all along, which I say I totally hated. But as I said, it's not my number 20 because there were good things about this film. But overall, it was a poor film for me. But I know they hate me. But anyway, let's move on. Let us move on. So that was our number 7. So next, we have a tie. So we're going to call this a tie for number 5. So we're just going to skip right over 6 and say these two movies are tied for number 5. And we'll go at these movies one at a time in order of the release date. So the one that was released first, and then we'll do the one that was released later. So tied for number 5 is The Avengers. That is the first Avengers movie. Don had this at number 10. I had this at number 5. Both Darrin and Josh had this at number 4. So either one of you want to go first with The Avengers.
Darrin has indicated for me to go first. And so I'll just, for a superhero film, I'm going to describe this as a beautiful movie. I mean, that's something that Bridges of Madison County is a beautiful movie. Dances with Wolves is a beautiful movie. The Avengers is a beautiful movie. The plot is since Don kind of shat on Joss Whedon earlier, I'm going to stick up for him a little bit. The man writes, oh, fuck, I forgot my words. Oh, God, group of people. What the fuck is that called? Somebody help me here.
Ensemble.
Ensemble, thank you. He writes ensemble characters and dialogue better than anybody, maybe ever. And yeah, he's not perfect because occasionally some of his characters start to talk the same and everybody sounds like they have the same brain sometimes, but nobody does ensemble dialogue better than Joss Whedon. And right now, nobody directs an ensemble cast as good as Joss Whedon does. And he got the absolute best performances out of everybody on that set. From the freaking extras in the background to the people getting their close-ups, he got the absolute best out of everybody. The effects were amazing. It kind of blew my mind. The hero shot where the camera kind of pans around and everybody's doing their thing is my single favorite shot in films ever.
Yeah, Josh, you were right. Also, because this is the number 4 film, it was astounding. It was better than it had any right to be. It was what everybody wanted, and no one thought that you would actually see. You were actually able to introduce these characters in previous movies and then move in and make it work. It worked so well with all of these characters. And yes, if you saw those earlier films, great, but you didn't need to. In the film, they basically introduced them just enough so that you could go with it and play. You had Mark Ruffalo being brought in as the Hulk, which was just brilliant. He plays that role so perfectly, where Edward Norton, like I said before, was a little too actiony for my Banner viewpoint. Here we have somebody who wanted nothing but to avoid everything, to try and stay away from people, who played this balance of characters so incredibly well. We had early shots of Chris Hemsworth's comedy chops here. One of my favorite lines in the movie is when they're talking about Loki, and he's just like, you know, tell how you speak about my brother. And Black Widow goes, he killed all of these people. And she's like, he's adopted. I mean, it was a perfect timing. It was almost like a throwaway line, but it's one of the funniest bits in that film, which I just totally love. The last battle is what, a half hour long? At least 20 minutes. I mean, it just goes on. It's beautifully done. We get our emotional pull with the death of Coulson, who we've seen since Iron Man 1, who is such a loved character. It, you know, created Coulson Lives, which led to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the top-rated Marvel television show. You can't argue with that. It's on paper. It's an amazing film. It is better than anybody thought that it could have been. It was smart to bring in Loki as the villain. Yeah, we get our little Skybeam stuff, but it's a Skybeam that actually made sense. It's a portal. It brings people in and you've got to shut it down. It's not some mysterious act. So, I mean, everything about this film I thought was just beautifully well done. Yeah, I think there's a couple of the MCU films that did things a little bit better, but for this movie, yeah, just knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, it's interesting watching the train wreck that was the Justice League trying to emulate what the Avengers pulled off here. Because what the Avengers did, they did everything right. And they said everyone tries to boil it down, like DC fans will try to boil it down to a Marvel versus DC argument, which actually is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with a well-planned, well-constructed movies compared to a studio trying to rush and copy what another studio has already done. Like, and part of the reason why the Avengers worked so much and the Justice League didn't is because they took the time to establish each and every character. And I agree with, I think it was you, Darren, maybe it was Josh, who said earlier that, or no, it was Darren, that you don't even have to have seen any of the previous movies to enjoy the Avengers. You can come in fresh and enjoy the Avengers. And I can totally agree with that. But at the same time, it's an added bonus for those who have seen these characters established, and to see them all play with each other for the first time. It was just amazing. And the story structure, the plot, the action, the suspense, and everything, it just works. Like it all is planned out beautifully. So yeah, I think this is one of the best comic book movies. But anyway, Don, you only had this at number 10. Wow, what gives?
Look, I mean, again, it was one of those movies, like Thor and like some other movies where it's like it started off higher on the list, and the more I went through the other movies, it was kind of like, oh man, but I like this one better. But I like this one better. But I like this one better. And that's kind of how it ended up at number 10. I mean, but again, like I said, to get up there. I mean, well, no, I said if it made it to my top 5, then it must be absolutely amazing. Look, here's the thing, right? On first viewing, midnight screening, absolutely loved the Avengers. First time you had seen anything like it, but on subsequent viewings, the luster, the shine, does not hold up as well for me as some other films. Don't get me wrong, I still have my yearly, hey, let's pop in Avengers, but I do recognize that it lost that loving feeling for me to a certain extent. I still love the movie, but there are 9 other movies that I happen to like better. That's all.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the other movie that is tied at number 5, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy. First Guardians of the Galaxy, and let me bring up the stats here. Darrin had it at number 9. Don and Josh had it at number 5, and I had it at number 4. So I'm actually surprised I was highest on this. I probably am not the person here who likes it the best, but I'll go ahead and start anyway. It was number 4 for me because watching it again, like I've said before, I felt this movie was a bit overrated, and I do stand by that because I don't think it's a masterpiece, but it's really good. It's a really enjoyable movie. It's definitely top 5 for me. Mainly the ensemble cast. Like, to me, this works a lot better than it did in the second one, which I kind of already talked about. And just the comedic moments, it has some pure like gold. Like, I remember laughing almost like people in the theater had to tell me to shush me because I was laughing hysterically at the part where they were planning how to get out of the prison, and you just see Groot in the background just starting the plan without them. Like, just the way these, now the reason why I wouldn't be like number 1 and number 2 for me is because it did have a generic throwaway villain with the Ronin the Accuser who cares about, and some plot that kind of didn't care about, but the characters were so great, the comedy was great, the action scenes are good. So yeah, definitely a top 5 for me. Josh, if you want to go next.
Yeah, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of changed things when it came out. I mean, the Marvel movies were one way, and then Guardians came out, and it was something totally different. And it was so good that they decided to copy it with Ragnarok and fail. Zing. But yeah, I mean, from the soundtrack to the ensemble cast to I mean. Anybody who watched Parks and Rec and then thought Chris Pratt could pull off Star-Lord, I didn't think he could do it, because I mean, yeah, and Andy is really funny or whatever in Parks and Rec, but Star-Lord is like next level hilarious, but also kind of a badass, which is just really, really cool and fun. And it's a really fun movie. The soundtrack is great. The visuals are awesome. I mean, who knew Dave Bautista could even act? That guy's freaking hilarious. Zoe Saldana was awesome. I mean, there's nothing not to like about it. And, oh, God, before I forget, I was worried that Rocket Raccoon was going to be ridiculous. Kind of like the same fear I had with Ant-Man. I was like, ooh, man, if they get Rocket wrong, this whole thing's going to fall apart. And they nailed it.
Yeah, I love this movie. the opening reminded me, a lot of an Indiana Jones film. Look, there was a lot of homages to great 80s action adventure films. The soundtrack was awesome. I think the casting for all of these characters was perfect. I mean, there wasn't much wrong that I found with the movie, and the fact that look, don't get me wrong, Ronan the Accuser, yeah, this was one of the Marvel standard cookie cutter villains, and I was a little disappointed by that because Ronan the Accuser is such a great villain. And then there's the other thing with the Nova Corps, which I'm like, why would you introduce Xandar and not give us a real Nova? But I think that there were so many good things about the movie that it was like I can overlook some of the small things that I disliked about it. And again, when crack my top 5. So I mean, I might watch that one after we finish.
Sure. It suffers from a villain that's not that impactful, and yet he is also defeated partially by a dance-off. So that's a plus right there. Yeah, you do get the Nova Corps, you get Xandar, but you don't get a Nova, and that is kind of a loss. However, what Guardians did great is it blew open the doors for the MCU. It entered us into the cosmic realm, which is really where so much of Marvel really exists, and so many different things happen. It takes us different from everything that was before and gives us a fun space adventure romp, almost in the vein of Star Wars in its way. So it was, but yeah, an amazing, great soundtrack with basically, tier 3 characters now becoming almost like the top of the MCU's line. Well, okay, we got some issues going on now with the whole James Gunn thing, but still, just an incredible job that was done with great characters. It was a blast. It was certainly one of the most fun films that we had from the MCU since then. So yeah, there are, a couple of little minor points to it, but it had just expanded the MCU world so much. And I think it was after Guardians where they finally looked and went, oh, we can do all of this stuff and the audience is going to go with us. And if Guardians accomplished anything, it was that. And it just blowing open the doors of the MCU and the realms of possibilities, which really, I think, allowed them to go, yes, let's do a Doctor Strange. Let's get some of this crazy stuff going that we have just talked about before. And yeah, I think that was the best thing. And yeah, it was a fun time, I think.
So why was this only your number 9, Darrin?
Because I liked several other films better, as I said, and I think that didn't have some of these small drawbacks of villains and such that Guardians did have.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, and we have yet another tie. So we'll consider this a tie for number 3. So we're jumping straight into our top 3, I guess, even though we have 4 films. But yeah, so tied for number 3. And again, I'll do the same sort of thing, which kind of gives away what's coming. But let's start with number 3, Black Panther. Black Panther is number 3. And I had this as my number 8. Darrin had this as number 7. Don and Josh had this as their number 3. So Josh, actually, why don't you go first? Because again, I know what's coming. So Josh, why don't you start us off with the Black Panther?
I mean, there's Black Panther is, he's kind of, if you're a comic book reader, Black Panther is kind of like a second tier superhero. He's on the Avengers, but he's like almost like a backup, right? And they took him and they gave him his own movie, and they absolutely nailed every single element of it. He had a great villain. Oh my God. Killmonger is maybe the best villain we've gotten so far in the MCU. He was believable. He was sympathetic. In some, weird level, you almost kind of root for him a little bit, which is something that you could have gotten with Thanos and just didn't. So everybody else looks frozen. Oh shit. Okay. Nobody else was moving in at all, and I was like, oh god. I think where Black Panther really excelled was with the setting. Seeing Wakanda and getting that right, I think, was maybe the most important thing that you could get with everybody that they got from Denai Guerrera to oh gosh, who played his sister? Oh shit, she was amazing. Now Don can't remember either. I'm looking at him, but all the supporting characters did such a great job at all these little elements that they were asked to do. It just set Black Panther, I think, apart from most of the other movies on the list. Just getting those performances out of these side characters, I think, was super important to the film.
All right, so wow, and we've lost we lost Mark again, but hopefully he'll be back soon. Look, Black Panther. A lot of people made much ado about this being like first black superhero with super big budget. I mean, first one since Blade. I mean, like, god damn it, we can't forget about Blade, right? But I think that the things that this did right was not so much world building, but culture building. Like, it showed you the culture of Wakanda, but I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of the actual country itself, just to kind of tie it together. The villain, amazing. The fact that the opening monologue is not who you would imagine that it was, because you would probably think that the opening monologue is either a random kid from Wakanda, or that it is T'Challa talking to his father. And then when you get the realization that no, that was actually Killmonger learning from his dad about Wakanda. The use of Ulysses Claw as kind of like, yeah, okay, he's the villain, he's here, but he's just the stepping stone for Killmonger to get into Wakanda, and just like, yeah, remember this guy that you people all hated? Well, I brought him back and he wasn't able to do it. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, why didn't T'Challa just tell him? It was like, look, T'Challa was fucking embarrassed. He was embarrassed that he didn't get the villain, and also he's trying to figure out, like, who is this guy that has a ring that he shouldn't have. He found out so much about his father and his lineage, and just the way, like, this movie was another one, broke the hero down and brought him back up. And yeah, while it did have issues with some of, like, like maybe there was a scene or two that it was kind of like, all right, I wish you didn't do that. Overall, this is one of the better movies in the MCU. Just for the fact that the characters, how many times do you get background characters who people love as much or maybe even more than the main character? A lot of people love Shuri now. A lot of people are loving M'Baku. A lot of people, the villain, people are like, why did they have to kill Killmonger? Why couldn't they just have saved him and threw him in jail? Fuck it, save him against his will and throw him in jail, and have him break out later. Yeah, and I love the fact that even though you knew what they were talking about in terms of political stuff. It wasn't trying to beat you over the head with an agenda. It wasn't trying to preach to you about, it wasn't trying to preach to you an ideology. I mean, or if it was, I didn't really get an ideology out of it. I got, hey, look, how about we put all the bullshit aside and try to help one another, to do better for humankind. Um, and so, I like the fact that, the villain actually challenged the hero's perceptions of what it means to do the right thing. And because of the villain, the hero actually had to challenge himself to do better. So yeah, I thought that Black Panther was an amazing movie. It was an achievement in storytelling, I think, for Marvel, because it broke the mold in a much different way. And it's one of the few, and then there are two others that for me, kind of went into deeper narratives. But this is one of the few for me that storytelling wise, I think was a great achievement for the MCU. And that's why I love Black Panther so much.
So, Darrin, I was lost for a while. Have you had a chance to go yet? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Then.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, you cannot understate the importance of this film and the impact of Black Panther. Both are showing that people of color can lead a movie, lead a superhero movie, and be the top domestic grosser. Period. I mean, it's an astounding film. It's culturally has a huge impact, and yeah, amazing secondary characters. M'Baku was amazing. My daughter fell in love with Shuri immediately. She was looking at magnetism and all sorts of different science things as soon as we got home. I mean, it's astounding. You have Michael B. Jordan, yes, and I know Acton in the chat has a little bit of a different opinion on here, but I thought it was an astounding villain. I thought Killmonger was great. And again, everything that you had just said, Don, is completely true. It's not higher on my list because there are a couple of just structural or decision-making problems that I had. The repeats of the challenge scene, I thought was kind of off. I know that they needed to do the challenge sequence in order to establish that so that Killmonger could come in and throw it up. However, Killmonger is supposed to come in during periods of transition, and he missed that. So do you just get to challenge the king at any point? It started to give a little bit of a repetition to me, and it lost some of the impact. I loved Claw. My God, I mean, we just saw the little bit of him in Age of Ultron, which was okay. But here, I thought he was perfect. He was hilarious. He was having the best time. So when he got killed, it really kind of upset me. Again, this is another one of those where we're killing our villains. And I get why Killmonger died. And his speech at the end about being just throw me in the ocean like the slaves of old that would rather die than be, enslaved. I mean, his statement is great. The fact that his viewpoint, like you said, Don, becomes really where T'Challa goes to. He sees the truth in that. Maybe the way that he wanted to do it was a little too much, but he saw the value for it, the impact of what he wanted to do to start to reach out to the world, to use Wakandan technology and culture as an engine of change in the world, as opposed to hiding out. I mean, some amazing, great storylines and some great impacts in there. Like I said, to me, there was a little repetition in story that kind of hampered it down. I think they could have been done a little more efficiently. I didn't like killing Claw because I was really enjoying him as a character. And it's another one of those where I'm like, man, I want to see this guy come back, become a bigger villain, do a little bit more. Also, I really want Secret War to eventually be done, especially with the Fox deal done. And with Claw dead, that really changes a lot of those possibilities. So there's, again, small stuff, small little things. But you cannot, like I said, you cannot understate the impact and importance that Black Panther has not only on the MCU, but really in action films, in just films moving forward. Also, Wakanda Forever. I can't hear you, Mark.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Oh boy.
Mark is signing for us, attempting technological fixes. I think what he's really saying is we're all right, and it's the best film that Mark ever saw, and he really can't wait for the sequel.
He absolutely loved Killmonger. He's his favorite Marvel villain.
Of all time.
He bought all of the Black Panther comic books because now he wants to read them. He had to take out a second mortgage on his house. He bought so many comics.
Cool. You can hear me now?
Yes.
All right, cool. Sorry, my microphone got disconnected. The wires are temperamental. Anyway, not quite, guys. Although I'm not low in this film. I had this as number 8, so it was a higher tier of Marvel films. It was in my top 10. Although it's as I said, there's a cluster of 7 films, and this was all sort of on the high end of that cluster. I don't know. The one thing I said I'll have to disagree with you guys is actually more in the positive way, is I actually liked the way they killed off Killmonger at the end. I thought that was a really powerful death scene. I think it brought a lot more weight to the ending of the film. If they kept him alive, that would have felt a bit too comic booky for me. Because sometimes I think it's a bit too comic booky. Oh, we have to keep the villains alive so they can come back again. As much as I like the villain, I think he works best as a one-and-done villain. And I think that just gives more power to his performance and more power to his film. And I also disagree with Atkin in the chat who's saying didn't like Killmonger. I agree with you guys. Loved Killmonger. I thought his backstory and his motivation were so... The fact that he was a villain, so he was doing evil things. He was going around killing people. But you could relate to him. You could get on board with him. And to me, those are the best kinds of villains. Now, I do think, even though he had a really good backstory, I think they could have fleshed out his character a bit more, but that's not a big thing for me. I still thought he was one of the, definitely, I would say my second favorite villain in the MCU. We haven't gotten to my first favorite yet, but he's my second favorite villain in the MCU. It's the rest of the movie about Wakanda that I wasn't as on board with. I didn't hate it, but it's very different. It had more of a political landscape where you had the different tribes and they had the battles where you were talking about, but Darrin, the challenge for power. To me, I wasn't that engaged with that part of the storyline. To me, because that lost some of the character moments to me, and it made it more of this political landscape thing where I wanted to get more into the. Even though I do feel like we got Killmonger was a great, well-developed character who you get behind, I didn't really feel for a movie that's called Black Panther. I didn't think we really got into the mind or the character of Black Panther. I think they focused a bit too much on the ensemble around him, personally. But that, again, I still think highly of this film. It's just I wouldn't put it as one of the best, but it's still a great film. Anyway, so I'm not disagreeing with you guys too much here. Anyway,
maybe the movie should have been called Wakanda instead of Black Panther.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so let's get into the other film that was tied for number 3, which it came out later than it. What could it be? It's Avengers Infinity War, tied at number 3. Hold on, let me just bring up the stats here. So I had this at number 9. Josh had it at number 7. Darrin had it at number 3. And Don, you had this at number 2. So Don, why don't you go first with Avengers Infinity War?
So yeah, Avengers Infinity War. This one was the one that it was either going to be number 2 or number 1 for me. And it kind of went back and forth. Look, first off, amazing achievement by the Russo brothers. They took every single franchise and brought them all together in this one movie. Everyone got their own little separate groups, they got their separate stories, and it helped to not make the movie feel small and monotonous. We got, the cameo by spoiler alert, by Red Skull, which was like, oh my god, can't believe he's here. Thanos as a villain, one of my favorite villains, period. And look, and while you don't empathize with his motivations, you can't necessarily say that Thanos is wrong. People saying, "Oh well, why didn't he just make more resources?" Well, I mean, think about it. He's like, "Yeah, I make more. You guys just deplete those resources. Better to just chop off half and leave what's here, and then it'll take you a lot longer to try doing that." But look, I think that while it did have, a couple of issues, the Black Order weren't really fleshed out. The Outriders weren't fleshed out at all. They weren't the focus. So it was kind of like they were there to do a job. They did their job. The focus was Thanos, and I think this definitely. I mean, for one, visually, I Thanos damn near looked real. Thanos damn near looked real in a way that we haven't seen many CGI, like full CGI characters, be able to fit into real world settings. And the story was, it wasn't that it was like the most amazing thing ever, but I think that they did such a good job with making you see the villain's point of view in terms of, this is his movie. Thanos is the hero, like how they say the villain is the hero of his own story. And I think that this, did the best job of demonstrating the villain being the hero of his own story. Even to the end where he goes and he's just sitting down, like he said, I'm just gonna, sit down and relax on the farm. And he did that, and I was just sitting up there like, what more do you want? There's not much more that you could do with this movie. And even for the runtime, it didn't feel like it dragged. And that was another thing that was great about it. It was 2.5 hours, and it didn't feel like you were sitting there like, oh my god, when is it gonna end? When it ended, I was kind of like, shit, I can't wait for Avengers Part 4, man. So yeah, I mean, that was my number 2. I love the movie, and yeah, I'm making this weekend a Marvel binge weekend, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, God, yes. Much like I had said, how Avengers worked, even if you hadn't seen any of the previous films, Infinity War almost required that you see all of the previous Phase 3 films to establish all of the characters, to see where everybody is coming from, to see what all of those relationships are. It trusted that the audience has done that and can go on with this story, and thus not have to spend additional time reintroducing everyone and resetting things up. It worked an astounding number of heroes and gave every one of them their due, their importance, their little bit of focus. Nobody really felt like they were ignored. You have the heroes losing in an Avengers film. So much the complaints have always been there are no stakes. Here are the ultimate stakes. And you know what? They lost. They failed. They didn't win. You told a story from a villain's perspective. And yeah, 2.5 hours and it moved. And I think because they gave enough time to every character, they focused on what was happening in each area, and they trusted that you were going to go with them and that you would go along with the story. It's an incredible accomplishment. And there's a lot of people that talk about it just being half of a film, that it just ended, that they felt ripped off, that it wasn't a complete. I'm going to tell you a quick little story about The Empire Strikes Back. I saw that as a kid in the theaters. And as great as everybody talks about that film, when it ended and Han Solo was gone and Luke's just getting his hand fixed, and then you have Lando like, "We'll meet you on Tatooine," and the credits rolled, I was like, what are you doing? You have just stopped. No, you gotta go get Han. What is this? That is the same. It's the same feeling that you got the end of Infinity War. It's a film. This is not the hero story. This is the villain's story. This is what happened with him. The heroes are the sequel when we go in and have to go in and fix everything. So yeah, it doesn't tell you the story that you had wanted in the beginning, because you don't want the heroes to have lost. But it tells a story that it needed to. It showed stakes from the villain standpoint, how even accomplishing everything. What did he say at the end of the little dream sequence to little baby Gamora? What did it cost you? It cost me everything. And you see that in Thanos. And yeah, you have a CGI villain who is completely sympathetic and grabs onto you and holds on, and that you believe is doing these things where you don't agree with him, but he believes in the reasons of why he's doing it. So yeah, an astounding film. Who's next, Josh or Mark?
Josh.
Mark, you're
Josh
there you
is
go.
Next. Josh,
okay,
I'll let you go.
Absolutely loved Infinity War. I had it on where did I have it? I had it 7 on my list, and I don't want anybody to infer that because it's not in my top 5 that I didn't absolutely love this film. I totally did. I will disagree with Don on one thing where he said Thanos is. I forget exactly what you said, Don, but basically Thanos' motivations were more fleshed out and more you sympathize with him more than any other villain. I would say that would go to Killmonger. I think I sympathize with him more than I did Thanos, and that's my only gripe about Infinity War. I think it would have been better if they split this duology into a trilogy and used the first movie to explore Thanos' motivations a little more, because I think they could almost have gotten the audience to cheer or to root for Thanos. I think you could have gotten the audience almost there. And so, I mean, where we are, we're still rooting for the good guys. It's really fun when the movie can kind of trick you a little bit and make you go, damn, Thanos is kind of right. Man, and get you right up to the cusp of almost agreeing with him, and they didn't quite get there for me. I think if they broke it up a little more and spent a little more time with Thanos, I think they could have gotten there.
Okay, so I don't hate this film. This was my number 9, so it was in my top 10 for me. But again, 9 for me was kind of the middling. It was the 7 out of 10. Yes, it's fun, but I have some issues with it. And I had some issues with this film. So first off, I want to agree with some of the positives you said. Like what Don said was something I could not possibly agree with more, which is why it ranked as high as it did for me, was the ensemble. Because that was actually my biggest fear coming in, because they had like a shit ton of characters. I'm like, how in the world are they going to handle all these characters coming together and not make it feel jumbled or not like missing out on the other characters? And I think they did. I was so impressed with the job they did and the camaraderie, the chemistry. Some of these characters, we get pairings we've never seen before. Thor and a Rocket Raccoon was amazing, and Doctor Strange and Iron Man, like that part of it was amazing. I had no complaints, and that's why I like this film. That's why I put it in my top 10. And also, like, I agree with Don that it has a long run time, but you don't feel it. It goes by. It never feels like it's dragging or stretching. Okay, where I disagree is with Thanos. I wouldn't say he's one of the worst villains, but I wasn't feeling him. To me, it felt like the movie was trying their damnedest. It was trying very, very hard to get you to sympathize with them and to flesh out this character. And I don't think they got there. I think they kind of failed. They wanted to make him more than a big, scary purple monster, but by the end of it, he was still a big, scary purple monster to me. And plus, like, he was too powerful. It's the Superman problem. You could almost say Mary Sue. I called him Mary Sue before. It takes some of the dynamic, some of the suspense, some of the interest out of it when you have this villain show up, I'm powerful and I'm going to win. And he's powerful and he wins. So what was the point? But you might have saw me freaking out when Darrin was talking about The Empire Strikes Back. That particular comparison irritates me. Empire Strikes Back was nothing like this. Empire Strikes Back did have a cliffhanger, yes, but it was a self-contained movie. You could watch that movie. It had a beginning, middle, and end. It had a character arc for each of the character journeys. This movie, that's another huge issue I had with it. It was not self-contained. It was too dependent on the next one. It was a giant cliffhanger that they're going to redo it. They're going to resolve it. And I guess you guys, your argument is it was Thanos' movie, and that's what was the beginning, middle, end. And maybe that's why I'm not seeing it, because I didn't feel Thanos as a character. I was more interested in the ensemble of characters and the group of people. And for me, that wasn't resolved. That was left on a huge cliffhanger. And just comparing it like to the best cliffhanger of all time, it's kind of like, to me, that's when The Walking Dead season 6 finale, which had the worst cliffhanger of all time. People were comparing that to The Best of Both Worlds, the start, which is the best cliffhanger on TV of all time. And you can't just take the best of something and say that's why this is good, but when they're actually totally different. And this was not self-contained like The Empire Strikes Back was. But again, I don't hate it. I still had it at number 9 because of the ensemble and the character chemistry was amazing. But if you guys want to rebut that.
No, I'm not necessarily comparing the two films. I'm just talking about the ending earlier right there. But I mean, I get what you're saying, and I see where people have that sort of point of view, and I'm not really disagreeing with it. Again, we're looking at a top 10 of the films. We're nitpicking at this point when we're separating things. So no, I mean, still an astounding accomplishment for a film.
Yeah. Listen, as far as Thanos goes, no, he was not a better villain or a more sympathetic villain than Killmonger. I like Thanos as a villain. I think that between him, Loki, and Killmonger, if Marvel were to just look at those three villains and say, okay, what did we get right with these guys, and follow that and kind of follow that formula or whatever, or just that methodology, I think that would do them justice in the future. Again, it's not like, again, it wasn't that I empathized or sympathized with Thanos' motivations. It was logically, and maybe I should have said this earlier, logically I understood what it was that he was doing. I didn't necessarily agree with what he was doing, but he did have a point. He made sense, but I still wasn't going to agree with it, though. You know, so that was the whole thing I was saying. Yeah, I mean, look, and I don't necessarily disagree with what you were saying, Mark, but I think that out of the look for me, it's the best Avengers movie. And out of the movies that the MCU has produced, it is one of the best. And again, it almost was my number one.
All right, cool. So let's get into it. Let's get into our top two. And this time there isn't a tie, so we do have a clear number two and number one. Josh, it's your turn to be on the outs. Okay, so let's get into our number two, which is number two on our list, despite Josh's best effort. Captain America Winter Soldier, number two on our list. This was number 15 on Josh's list. And it was number two on my list, and number one on both Don and Darren's list. So Don or Darren, each one of you want to go first with Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
I got it. Josh. Ooh, you what the absolute fuck, Josh. What? Yeah, okay. Anyway, look, man. Captain America the Winter Soldier was until basically Captain America the Winter Soldier is the Dark Knight of the MCU. Because for one, you had a character who in the first movie, a lot of people really didn't like the first Avenger. It was like the majority opinion was either not a good film or okay at best, right? And when you look at Batman Begins was not an amazing film. It was a good film. It was a very good film. But The Dark Knight was the film that was kind of like, holy shit, you can do that with a superhero movie. And Captain America the Winter Soldier for me was another one that was like, oh my god, I can't believe you did this kind of movie. For one, you got to think about it. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. only premiered like not even a year early. They're still in the first season when they did this, right? And as someone who was watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., when I stepped into the theater and saw the Hydra reveal, I was sitting there like, holy shit. I mean, look, I already knew the Winter Soldier storyline, so I wasn't surprised about the Bucky reveal. But the Hydra reveal was one of the most amazing turn of events because this began the transition for Captain America. We already had him questioning Nick Fury about the helicarriers and Project Insight and what was going on the Meridian Star, and him kind of partially distrusting the way that S.H.I.E.L.D. operated, and then to find out it's like, no, it's actually being fucking run by Hydra. Robert Redford, amazing. Samuel L. Jackson, amazing. The pairing of Captain America and Black Widow, amazing. There are very, very few things that are wrong with this movie. So the fact that it ended up as number 15 on Josh's list, fucking breaks my fucking heart. I feel like Padme at the end of Revenge of the Sith right now, man. Oh my god. Take it away. I can't say anymore, man.
Right, Darren.
Fucking Josh.
Yeah. I mean, for someone who says that he's a Captain America fan, to have rated Winter Soldier so low just is stunning for me, because this is the best film in the MCU, bar none, period. End of discussion. I was not a big Captain, as I mentioned before, I was not a big Captain America fan. The first movie made me interested. This made me a true Captain America fan, became my favorite Avenger. It began, like I had mentioned before, that a little bit that Ant-Man had sort of continued, that a superhero film does not have to be a genre unto itself, that it can be a genre modifier, that we have a political espionage thriller that happens to have superheroes into it. The opening bit where we get the introduction with the race around and on your left, and I mean, we get a great character, what will end up being our big duo going forward in the very beginning. We get that awesome attack on the ship where we really see the difference in combat styles that Captain America has learned, having been with S.H.I.E.L.D. now in the modern age, just kicking butt, running around that ship. That huge tracking shot was just astounding. Yes, the whole Hydra reveal was great, and certainly built on top of what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was doing, which had to deal with the whole aspect of using an agency that they knew by the end of the season was gonna be gone, was, I thought, brilliant. But watching that all happen on the film was great. How you got what's his name, who is now, I'm got so many things going on in my head right that I can't think about, the doc from the first movie, who's now in the computer there, and having it actually have that great comic reference of his look on the face and the big eyes and the goggles and everything, was just, I mean, there was so much done right in this film. Plus you've got Robert Redford as the head of Hydra, who's the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. and now the head of Hydra, and all of this was just, I mean, talk about a brilliant move. You bring Redford into this, into a political thriller, you have selling points right there. Plus, we, of course, have the Winter Soldier himself. We get Bucky coming back. We get that reveal that, you know, yes, if you know from the comic books, that's awesome that you are expecting that. If you are not, it is still such a surprising, perfect reveal, and it becomes this instant personalized story of confusion and, you know, wanting to do the right thing for the right reasons, and wanting to move beyond just seeing the bad guy as a villain, but as someone that has to be rescued, is to be saved, to be turned, to be shown what the truth is. I mean, there's so much that was done right in this film. It was just, like I said, it is the best film in the MCU. It is the perfect balance of a political thriller, of honest, grounded story making, as well as blending in a superhero, making a compassionate villain, and making a hero that questions where he has gone, plus shown the arc that he has continued on from the beginning and that feeds wonderfully into Civil War afterwards. Just, my God, how could you be a Captain America fan and not rate this as number one?
All right. So, too bad Atkin had to leave, because he would have backed Josh up on this, because I know he wasn't that big on this film either. But yeah, this is nearly my number one. If it was Thor Ragnarok, beats it out for me. But before that movie came out, this was my number one, and it's a very close number two for me. So I'm more on board with Don and Darrin on this one. And I talked before about how I wasn't really into comic book movies, and I wasn't really into the MCU. This is the movie that changed my mind. This is the movie that first got me to woke up and appreciate and say comic book movies can be more. And I know earlier Josh in the comments was saying, oh, Mark's complaining about comic book movies being too comic booky. But essentially, because I'm coming at it a different perspective, because he's coming at it as a fan of comic book. I'm coming at it as someone who didn't like comic book movies at this stage at first, but then got drawn in for movies exceeding the stereotypes. So my perspective, I just like films that move beyond a stereotypical comic book movie and do something different. And for me, this is the first film that really showed me that they could do it. This was one of the best action suspense thrillers, political thrillers, intrigue films, period, bar none. Doesn't matter comic book or not. It's very suspenseful, very engaging the whole time. The characters are very fleshed out. I feel like I need to watch this again, because it's been a while, and I do really love it. And I remember before, when this film came out, and again, I wasn't that hot on comic book movies at the time, and everyone I know, all the friends, everyone was saying, oh, the movie's amazing. And I was just like, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I went and saw it. I was like, holy shit, they were totally right. And to me, this is like the biggest disparity between a sequel being so much better than the first one. Like even more so than, say, Star Trek 2 was to the first Star Trek. And that I'm going to go that bold. The disparity between how awesome and amazing this sequel was compared to how average and the first one was, to me, is the biggest example you can find in any films, my opinion. Anyway, Josh, take it away.
Okay, I'll preface everything I'm about to say with, yeah, this movie did a whole bunch right. It did a lot of things right. This would have been a great James Bond movie. Now, let's start with Crossbones. You killed off a fucking villain, a great villain. What, in the first 15 minutes of the movie? I mean, come on. Crossbones is a fantastic villain. I'm getting a no. When did he die off?
That's Civil War, not,
that is Civil
Winter
War.
Soldier.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's when the whole Accords thing started, because there was a backlash. A lot of people died when they killed off Crossbones.
No, Crossbones survived. He got hit by the helicarrier in the building and was taken out, and then he was on the stretcher.
Fine. That was Civil War then. All right. So I'm mixing up my films, and that's neither here nor there. The big thing is the Hydra reveal. I feel like everybody was surprised by that or whatever, and I'm like, I saw that coming a mile off. As soon as Robert Redford was announced as a member of the cast, I'm like, oh, he's a bad guy. I mean, it wasn't a shock to me. It wasn't surprising. I'm like, oh, Hydra is Captain America's primary villain. Of course, they're gonna pop up here. I mean, and I'm sorry, this movie was too funny. Every other line was a quip, and it got annoying. And by the end of the film, I was irritated by every single line of dialogue. That's all I got.
I think that perfectly illustrates what I was saying before, that you're coming at a more perspective of a comic book fan, someone who has knows the material a lot and is enjoying it for a comic book movie, where I was judging it as a normal film.
Yeah. I just also want to throw in Falcon's name and Arnim Zola were the two ones that were missing me. I loved Zola's return on that. I thought the introduction of Falcon and bringing him in was beautiful. I thought Anthony Mackie did an amazing job in with that. I could see where you would have thought that Redford was going to be a villain, but was he going to be Hydra? Yes, that is a classic Captain America organization that he's against. Certainly was in the first movie, but I thought that the way that they had saved that and brought that up, I thought was done really well. The elevator fight scene, which I didn't comment in, which was mentioned in the chat and with Mark here. Yeah, man, that elevator fight was just so good. But yeah, okay. Anyway, I think it's the best.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. Let's get into our number one, which really surprised me. If you're keeping track, you could processes of elimination, figure out what it is. I was actually surprised this is number one. Number one, best MCU movie according to all of us combined, is Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming is number 8 for Don, number 5 for Darrin. It's number 3 for me, so it's right up there. Again, to me, this is really great. Right up with the best of the MCU. But Josh had it even higher than me, as is number 1. Number 1 for you, Josh, is number 1 for our collective list, Spider-Man Homecoming. So Josh, why don't you kick us off?
Spider-Man Homecoming hit me right in the nostalgia feels. Going back to when I was a little kid, like in preschool, I had that shitty little red Spider-Man mask that had like black webbing drawn on it, and I had this ugly ass red hoodie that I made my mom draw webs on in black marker so I could dress up as Spider-Man. Going all the way back to preschool Josh, I am a Spider-Man super fan. And after Spider-Man 3, that Sam Raimi abomination, and then 2 below average Amazing Spider-Man films, to see it done and done to perfection, from the casting of Tom Holland as Peter Parker Spider-Man, all the way through to going a little bit different with Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. I thought that was a very inspired choice. This was the absolute perfect Spider-Man movie, and that's why it's my number 1.
Cool. And I had this up pretty high. I am again, as me and Josh agree on this one, but we're both coming at it from different perspectives. I'm not that huge of a Spider-Man fan, although I did read the comics when I was little, but that was a while ago. I was more of an X-Men guy anyway. But full disclosure, I didn't like any of the Sam Raimi Spider films, any of them. Not the first one, not the second one, and certainly not the third one. And I didn't bother with the Amazing ones. I think I saw parts of the first one, like, yeah, this sucks. So I hated all of the Spider-Man movies up to this point. And so my expectations, I didn't think it would be that good. I think, oh, this is going to do another version of him. And I loved it. I think, again, what attracts me most to films is the character stories. And remember before I hinted that my favorite villain has yet to come? We get to it now. Michael Keaton as the Vulture, my favorite villain in the MCU. And that's mainly because instead of like the opposite of what they did with Thanos, instead of this is a big, powerful man, he's going to destroy the world. It's just a guy. It's just some random guy selling stuff, trying to get by. And like Killmonger, you could buy his motivations. You can almost agree with his motivations. And that's what I love about this. This is why it's one of my favorite MCU movies, because it's such a small scale. Too many of these comic book and MCU movies bring it back, oh, the world's going to die. We're all going to die. The galaxy's going to blow up. But here is just a small scale personal story. And to me, that's a lot more something I can latch on to more, because it doesn't rely on the gimmick of, oh, the world's going to blow up. It gets more into... I once heard like a professor of writing say that the stakes of a film or story or whatever are only as high as the characters believe them to be. It doesn't matter how much people are going to die, how much the world's going to danger. It's what the stakes, personal stakes, are for the characters. And for this film, I felt those personal stakes. I felt them with the Vulture. I felt them with Spider-Man. I felt them with Iron Man, with him, having being the mentor figure to Spider-Man. And it's funny as well. The humor works amazingly well. It drawed me in a lot in that regard as well. So yeah, that's why it landed as number 3. So this is only 3 out of these 20 films, which I would give a 9 out of 10 to. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, Darrin.
Yeah. This was Spider-Man. And also, Josh, sounds a little bit more like a Ben Reilly outfit that you had the clone Spider-Man there than the original Spider-Man. But that's also showing my appreciation of Spider-Man also, that I know who Ben Reilly is. Yeah, this was perfect. I also agree that keeping this as a much more intimate film, a much smaller picture where you're really dealing with a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that is giving directions to an old lady and trying to, stop a bicycle thief and doing all this. I mean, this is perfect. This is Spider-Man as he is supposed to be, a very small, localized, caring about the neighborhood. Funny as all hell too. Man, this movie had me laughing, and appropriately laughing. It wasn't like forced humor or pushed in or just quippiness. This is Spider-Man. This is Peter Parker. This is him in his world. While I thought that the suit in some ways maybe a little over the top, but you've got to have your Iron Man reference in there, and that sort of makes sense. We saw that in Civil War a bit, so this worked. Certainly so much better than, the Sam Raimi. While there was some positive aspects, Peter Parker's a genius. He makes his own webbing. The fact that we see this and his whole process in doing that, I thought was perfect and what we really needed to see. Michael Keaton as the Vulture, yes, a sympathetic villain. You understand why he is doing this. He was just a guy looking out for his family, and it was Tony Stark, the big guys, that pushed him out, that screwed him over, that in a way forced him into this role of villainy. He is doing this to support his family. He is doing this to take care of the people that he had hired, who, you know, those were his jobs. Again, very believable stakes that were going on right here. Tom Holland, amazing in this role. Perfect. He has the physicality, he has the timing, he has the humor. Yes, while I think Captain America Winter Soldier is a better MCU film, I am not going to disagree that this is a great film. Certainly one of my favorites, ones that I have watched several times, and probably like Don will end up watching again this week because it is so good. Yeah, I mean, everything has been pretty much already said. I'm sure Don's going to want to add a few more things onto it.
I just had one quick thing to add. I forgot to mention is that scene was where Michael Keaton's in the car with Spider-Man in the backseat and figures out who he is. That was so amazing. That was so intense. Oh, there we go, Josh. That was like Michael Keaton at his best. Like the whole way that scene was played was just so, it's like the pinnacle of tension. And again, you know, the stakes weren't end of the world. But anyway, Don.
Yeah, listen, I absolutely loved this movie. It is the best Spider-Man movie, period. I'm talking about like by a mile, but maybe even more. Tom Holland, great casting. I love the fact that even though they didn't have exact one-to-one characters from the comic books, we got a lot of Easter eggs. You know, we got the Miles Morales Easter egg in there. We got the Prowler, even though, you know, he's not being the Prowler. It's like, I love in comic book movies where they can bring in characters from the comic books, and even if they don't necessarily have a part, it's like, okay, they're there, and maybe they might show up later. We got, you know, Matt Gargan, played by Michael Mando, who could show up as the Scorpion in a future movie. Michael Keaton, amazing as the Vulture. You know, and the fact that, he was just a regular guy, you know, doing salvage work. He was like, hey, look, I'm already sanctioned here. And then in comes Tony Stark at the head of damage control. Another amazing Easter egg reference from the comic books. You know, so yeah, and again, showing my New York bias, you know, like most of it filmed in New York, and the stuff that wasn't filmed in New York, they were able to find a way to you know, finagle it so you didn't know. Ends up in Coney Island, which is not too far from where I live. I'm still wondering who did Tony Stark sell that damn building to? And the fact that even though this was a Sony film, it's still tied directly into the MCU, and to the point where, you know, supposedly everything Sony is doing now, they've worked out a deal that it's part of the MCU, even if it's not like officially. Like, it's basically the same way that they've done the Netflix shows, where it's there but it won't get referenced anywhere else. The point is, this is a great movie, and even though it ended up further down on the list, I'm not mad at it being number one. So you know what? Even though, Josh, you did the wrong thing with Winter Soldier, you will be forgiven for this one.
All right, cool. Let's go ahead and wrap up this discussion. I think we've been going over 3 hours now. Whoa. Anyway, let me just recap our top 20, just to put it out there. So our number 20 is Thor Dark World, number 19 Iron Man 3, number 18 Thor, number 17 Iron Man 2, number 16 The Incredible Hulk, number 15 Captain America the First Avenger, number 14 Avengers Age of Ultron, number 13 Iron Man, number 12 Ant-Man and the Wasp, number 11 Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, number 10 Doctor Strange, number 9 Ant-Man, number 8 Thor Ragnarok, number 7 Captain America Civil War. Tied for number 5 is The Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. Tied for number 3 is Black Panther and the Avengers Infinity War. And number 2 is Captain America Winter Soldier. And number 1, Spider-Man Homecoming. Anyway, thank you guys so much for participating in this chat. It's a lot of fun, a lot of blast. Someone in the chat earlier said it's great getting discussions like this because you hear various different opinions. No one's echo. It's not an echo chamber. We all have different takes, different views, and it's so great to get together and get all these views out, even though we might disagree on certain things. It's great to flesh out those disagreements, and I totally agree with that. So thank you guys in the chat, everyone, for joining us. I see a lot of people here. I know some had to leave a bit early because we're going along. Anyone watch this archives, thanks for sticking with us. Anyway, just a quick shout out to what you're up to, where people can find you. We'll start with you, Josh. What's going on with you?
Wow, giving me way too many props after what I did to Winter Soldier. I'm Josh. The channel is Geeksiders. I'm also going to be starting a new channel that'll be just me. Geeksiders is our brand is my wife and I. We're going to have a new channel that's going to be just me. It's going to be called Joshua Justice. Videos will be starting very soon. Primarily video games, little bit of unboxings, little bit of reviews.
Cool. So, Darrin, where can people find you?
You can find me over in D's Reviews here on YouTube. I do reviews of Got Gifted coming up this fall. Kind of a light season. A lot of the shows I normally do have either some have been canceled, some are being pushed due to longer productions. We got fourth and final season of Mr. Robot. Isn't even start, I think, filming until November, so that's going to be later. So, but we do a few things like that. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a lot of Marvel stuff, a lot of interesting shows, Legion. So, yeah, if you like stuff like that, come and check out my channel. Also, do want to give a quick shout-out to our guy in the chair from Spider-Man Homecoming, Ned. He was also awesome, who we didn't mention. And Zendaya did a great job in that as well. What about you there, Don? What you up to?
Yeah, I'm Don Willi. You can find me at my channel, Don of Ice and Fire. You know what? I've been away for a while, but I do think that it is time for me to make Ryan return. So, with that being said, next Thursday, look for me 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for Ice and Fire Opinions. I'm back live streaming. And then also make sure to check out the Hype Swatch channel. We do monthly Game of Thrones chapter breakdowns. I'm not sure what we're doing this month, but make sure to check us out for that one if you are into A Song of Ice and Fire. And of course, Mark, thank you as always for having me.
Cool. Yeah, and thank you guys for coming. Always a blast. So anyway, if you're finding my channel for the first time, I'm Enchantment of Eternity is my channel. My name is Mark. So I'm going on a bit of a hiatus after this video where I'm going to be I want to try to have videos made in advance. So I'm not really going to be releasing any videos in the month of September. I'm going to be making them so I'll have a surplus of videos so I won't feel rushed to get the videos made. But I will continue with my Better Call Saul reviews throughout September as each episode comes out, and maybe the occasional live stream if I feel like it, or if I might have a Patreon request that I might do that month. But other than that, I'll be reserving all my series that I do, like my Expanse book to show videos and my Star Trek episode reviews and Game of Thrones character analysis. All that's going to be shoved back a bit until October, which I'll be back in fury, with a surplus of pre-made videos. So yeah, and next week, actually, I'll be doing another live stream. It'll just be me and Ellen. I don't know if I've done a couple live streams with her before. She's just a devoted viewer of the show. We're going to do a live stream about Neelix from Star Trek Voyager. And we might end up talking about other things Star Trek, but she said, oh, it'd be cool to do a stream about Neelix because so many people hate him. And I kind of like Neelix, but it'd be great to get into that. So that will be, I think, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time next Friday. So that will be in doing. And hopefully, I'm just talking to these guys about doing a follow-up to the Trivia Enchantment of Eternity Trivia Challenge. Starting out doing a follow-up to that. Hopefully in October, early October for that. So keep an eye out for that as well. Anyway, thanks guys so much for sticking through this video, and we'll see you next time.